Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's hearing. We're going to hear further from Mr. O'Keefe in a moment, but before we do, Mr. Millett has something he needs to deal with.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. Yesterday I put to Mr. O'Keefe the response time for his appliance, and I put to him that it appeared to be outside the average response times, which I'd taken from the London Fire Brigade's overview document, which we got in May. In fact, that overview document is only describing average response times for the first and second responding vehicles, and not any subsequent responding vehicles, even though part of the same initial response as part of a predetermined attendance. And so I just wanted to make it clear that it is not suggested that as the third arriving appliance, Mr. O'Keefe's appliance was outside the times for which we have evidence about average response times.
Yes, thank you very much. Well, it's important to get that clear, and I'm grateful to you for doing so. Well, then we could have Mr. O'Keefe in, please. Thank you. Very good. Good morning, Mr. O'Keefe.
Good morning, sir.
You happy to carry on?
I am happy to carry on, yes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Millett.
Mr. O'Keefe, good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for coming back to us. Now, last night I was attempting to show you some video, a very short piece of video footage, and the audio with it as well. I better repeat, I suppose, for everybody's benefit, the trigger warning that we always give with videos of the building on fire and the audio that goes with it. What I'm about to show the witness is video and audio footage of Grenfell Tower on fire in the early part of that night. And so if anybody thinks they may find the images or the audio distressing, then they should either leave the room here that they're in or else turn themselves away from the live stream as it's coming out. Perhaps I should just leave 20 seconds or so for people to do that. And the video should be queued up at 1:12. Perhaps we can now go to that. So now, Mr. O'Keefe, what I'm going to show you is a short video clip, and I'd like you to listen out very carefully for what is being said, as well as to look very carefully at what is happening on the screen.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Right, if you can play that, please. Right. Now, did you hear anybody calling, or something sounded like Mike, Mike?
Yes.
Right, what was that?
I don't know, actually. Just someone calling the watch manager in charge, Mike Dowden.
Right. If we could just play that again and see if we can get anything a bit more clearly from it. Just listen out again.
Okay.
And also watch what the fire is doing at the same time. Okay.
It's difficult to pick it up. It's something about possibly a number.
Yes. Yes.
Well, as I spoke to you yesterday about when I spoke to Mike, watch manager Dowden, following our discussion about the increase of pumps, I turned around and shouted to my pump operator, firefighter Broderick, to make it 6 in an aerial. That could be that, make it 6 in an aerial.
It sounds, I don't want to suggest this to you because we can all hear it, but let me ask you, might it be, Mike, make it 6 now?
It might be that, yes.
Was it you, do you think, calling him to do that?
No, because it might have been. In hindsight, I recall it as me telling him advising as a fellow officer to make it 6.
Right.
And as I said yesterday, he said, "Do you think I should?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Okay, can you do that for me?" And the sequence that followed was me turning around and shouting to my driver, because as you can hear, there's a lot of noise, and that's the pump operating on the fire engine,
Yeah.
pumping water. It's quite loud, and there was a lot of noise in the area, as you will at any on the initial attendance at any incident. There is a lot of action and a lot of noise associated with it. So officers generally and firefighters shout instructions to each other or communicate by. We use our radios, but more commonly at the very beginning we shout at each other.
Okay. Now, And now, in the video,
Yeah.
we saw, and we could play it again. We saw burning material coming down from the window.
Yeah.
At that time, so not very long after you'd arrived, do you remember looking up at the window and seeing burning material coming off?
No, I remember flames coming out. There was no burning material coming off at that time.
Right.
The flames were just coming out the window. There's energy behind. When I say energy, there's when you have a compartment fire and it's developing and it's growing, it produces energy from the heat, and it will push flame out any opening and pushes it about. And that's what I saw with the flame. That it wasn't just wispy flame. There was something burning. The kitchen was on fire, I would imagine. And nothing burning material hanging down or falling down.
Okay, I wonder if we can then move the video on just to the next sequence and just to see what we can see there,
Okay.
and to see whether or not that was something you saw. So the next sequence is, I think, at 01. Well, actually, yes, at 01:15. Keep going. Let's see if this is the right one. Yes, that's the one. If you just play that. Right. Now, there are two things about that. Obviously, the burning, falling material, and then the jet starting up, it looks, and then going onto the exterior of the building. Did you see burning material like that coming off the building at
I
any
don't
stage?
recall seeing it. It would have concerned me if I'd seen that with that extent, because it looks like there's a crackling with the material, and there's a chemical reaction or a thermodynamic reaction going on, which is unusual.
Yes.
But the angle you're showing me is opposite to where I was standing. I was on the other side by the front of the building when I spoke to McDowden, so
Right.
he's obviously moved in that direction to speak to the firefighters. Now, when the original jet of water, the covering jet, was put on, it was quite early on, relatively early on. And when they had knocked the jet off, because as I said yesterday, the BA crew had gone into the flat,
Yes.
that's when I went to go to take over the bridgehead.
I see. Okay. So,
So that would have been when it was put back on afterwards.
right.
That's what would be my understanding of it.
So you think that the covering jet we saw just there at about 1:15 was the second time the covering jet was applied, or do you not know?
I do not know,
Okay.
but it's close by. It's close by, so it's difficult for me to give you an accurate answer on that,
Yeah.
time-wise.
So you have your conversation with Mike Dowden just outside the front entrance to the building, where you discuss the makeup. We know that he tasked you with going to run the bridgehead.
Yeah, take the bridgehead.
Is it in that same conversation that he did that?
Yes.
I see. And so what happened immediately next? What did you do immediately next?
I said, okay, I will. And I walked towards the front of the building, and I was side on looking at there's a big glass windows. And as I walked towards, I noticed that there was smoke in the lobby. There was a lot of light grey smoke in there. It wasn't thick smoke, but light, and it was blowing out with force. So I knew there was something mechanical, like a mechanical ventilation system, pushing it out the front doors.
So you say the lobby, you mean the ground floor entrance to the building?
Yeah.
Really?
Entrance, yeah.
Right. And you went to the lobby. How did you get into the lobby?
I walked in.
You walked in. The doors were open.
As far as I remember, yeah, I just walked straight up.
And at that stage, did you try to get entrance into the lift lobby within the building?
Not the lift, because I'd asked Watch Manager Dowden if we had taken control of the fire lift. He said it wasn't working. And as I walked by, I could see a firefighter trying to get it working still. I don't know who the firefighter was. I just looked to my left, and then I went to go through the door to go up the stairs to the second floor, or to the glass balcony or whatever it is.
I see. So, and how did you get into the lift lobby? Did you need a fob or was it open?
No, it was open.
Right.
As far as I recall, I just walked straight through.
Right. And can I just ask you to look at a photograph which we looked at, I think, with an earlier witness, Mr. O'Hanlon, which is INQ 178. So 50178. I just want to see if you can help me with the timing and the identity of firefighters. This is a.
That's Watch Manager Dowden.
That's right. Okay. And do you know what? Did you see him do that? Did you see him come into the main entrance and?
No, I didn't. In the entire incident.
Yes.
I didn't see Watch Manager Dowden in the tower.
You didn't?
No.
I see. Okay.
I believe he was in there at some stage, but I didn't see him.
Right. And then if you go to INQ 184, this is a picture of you, I think. Well, let me ask you. That is timed at 01:14:03, subject to minute adjustment.
Yeah, that is me.
That's you.
Yeah.
Now you're wearing a white helmet.
That's correct. I'm a watch manager. That's my normal
Right.
colour of my helmet. Yeah.
So that I'm clear, the white helmet is a watch manager helmet.
Correct. Well, a white helmet is any rank above crew manager.
Right.
For example, that the watch manager is the band on the. There's a band on the helmet, a stripe, and it's like the army. The higher you go up in the rank, you get more stripes.
Right.
And rank markings. That's a single band. A station manager, which is the next rank above me, will have a wider band. A group manager will have a wide band and a single band, and so on and so on and so on.
I see. Okay. And the incident commander will have the white surcoat, or
He will have the surcoat, a yellow and white surcoat with an insert in the rear of the surcoat indicating that he is the incident commander.
Yes.
So that he would be the go-to guy, or she would be the go-to person on the fire ground, wearing that as a focal point for command.
Yes. And if you go to 18, the next photograph, number 185, please. This is timed at 01:14:44 or so.
Yeah, that's me.
That's you again. And there are BA wearers going in, it seems. Do you know who they are?
No.
Okay. And then the next one is timed at 01:14:49, so just a few seconds later. And looks like you're holding the door open for them. That's you, is it?
That's me.
Okay.
I can't recognise the firefighters from this angle.
Okay. No. Now, just to get back to what you said a minute ago about smoke in the lobby,
Yeah.
and you said it was coming out, as it were, being forced out.
Yeah.
Did that give you any cause for concern at that stage?
Mild concern, it's not entirely unusual to find smoke travel in a building during a fire, given the proximity of the fire, which was on the 4th floor. But it's an indicator that of smoke travel.
Yes.
In a compartmentalised building with fire doors and lobbies. You wouldn't ordinarily get smoke travel unless a door has been opened. But I knew there was a crew who had gone from the bridgehead on the floor below with a jet. So that would cause smoke to come out of the when they made entry to the flat, to go into the lobby and subsequently down to the bridgehead. But other than the idea of the bridgehead is that you're meant to be in a smoke-free environment because we don't wear breathing apparatus. The officers and the firefighters working in the bridgehead don't wear breathing apparatus, and I hope that explains it to you that there would be smoke travel, but there seemed to be a lot of smoke. It was light, but I took it that maybe perhaps the ventilation system, which never appeared to work beforehand, had been repaired and it was just extracting smoke.
You say the ventilation system never appeared to work before?
Well, it was kicking in and out. I mean, I've never seen that was signified to me that it wasn't. It was like an engine trying to start up and stopping.
That was the breathing you referred to yesterday?
Yeah, it was like inhalation and exhalation.
Yeah. Okay. Now, you then went up to the second floor where the bridgehead was, and you described that in your witness statement on page 7 in the middle of the paragraph. And you say, I walked through the lobby door and up the stairs, which sort of went round on itself, to a glass-walled balcony, which was the second level.
Yeah.
I got to the balcony, and I spoke to crew manager Secret, asking, what have you got? He said it was a fire, and I think he said in a kitchen. Now, you said a minute ago, this morning, that you'd gone past somebody in the lift lobby still trying to work the lift.
Yeah, I don't know who it was. It was somebody trying to, because that's the way firefighters are. They're determined.
Yeah.
Maybe he was or she was detailed to try and get it to work.
Right.
But I was focused on going to the bridgehead.
Okay, and the person you saw on the balcony was definitely Chris Secret, was it?
Certain about it, yes.
So you think that somebody else, another firefighter, was also trying to get the lift to work?
On the ground floor.
On the ground floor. That's your recollection?
That's correct, yeah.
Right, okay. Well, we'll need to explore that. Do you know who that other firefighter was? Were they wearing BA?
No.
Not wearing BA?
Not wearing BA.
Okay. Were they alone or were they with others?
Alone.
They were alone. Right. And any other distinguishing features about that firefighter?
Tall. Taller than me anyway, but I'm not that tall, so tall.
Right. Well, we need to look for a tall firefighter.
Yeah.
Fine. And then you go up there. Can you explain at that stage where the bridgehead had been set up?
So the bridgehead had been set up on the second floor level. You had this glass, I don't know, how would you describe it, a balcony. I call it a balcony.
Yeah.
And just inside that, on the corridor in the lobby, BA had been set up, meaning breathing apparatus, entry control board, which had a firefighter St. Oban as the operator, and Chris Secret, the crew manager, was in charge of the bridgehead.
Okay. Now you say you spoke with Mr. Secret on the balcony. Was that where the bridgehead was, on the balcony?
Close to it, yeah.
Close to it. And where was Chris Secret going? Was he standing there, or was he coming away?
He was standing there. He was doing his job.
He was standing there. Okay. How far away from the bridgehead was he?
He was in the bridgehead.
Okay. And was the bridgehead on the balcony? Or?
No. The balcony was quite close to the bridgehead. It was just the way it was situated.
Right.
I believe I've seen some photographs of the inside.
Yes.
And I could if you could show me a photograph, I could explain more clearly to you.
Yes, I can show you a plan.
Okay, that's fine.
If I could do that. Yes. If you could go, please, or be shown tab 5 of the Master Docs bundle. I'll just see if I can show you plan of the second floor. This is MET 00012593, and if we just expand it, I showed Mr. Secret this yesterday morning. This is a plan of the second floor Mr. O'Keefe, and you can see the atrium or ground floor in the bottom right-hand corner.
Yeah.
And the stairs go up, and then there's the walkway gallery, which I think you're describing as the
The
balcony.
walkway gallery is what I'm talking about. So inside the walkway gallery,
Yes.
in there, it's in the communal hall is where the bridgehead was set up.
Right, and where do you think Mr. Secret was when you saw him and had this conversation with
He
him?
was standing in the narrow section of the beyond the steps up.
So
There, yeah.
I see. So you go out of the walkway gallery, turn right into that corridor there.
He may have been in a bit further, but it was in that area.
Right, I see.
So it was either by the lifts. I don't think we were by the lifts, but in the communal hall he would have been.
Right. Okay, that makes that much clearer.
Yeah.
Now, can you explain to us what the bridgehead looked like at that time in terms of how much- calm?
A working bridgehead. There was an engine control board set up.
Right.
The BA wearers had there was two BA wearers. They had one line of hose working,
Right.
and that was it.
That was it. Was there anything missing from that?
Yeah.
What?
Well, it was an IEC pack was missing, which is the I mentioned to Chris.
Right.
Apparently, it was nearby, but it hadn't been brought up. But I asked for it to be brought to the bridgehead.
You do. Okay.
This is when I took over as the bridgehead commander.
Yes. And did you test the communications between the bridgehead and Mike Dowden?
Yeah, I spoke to Mike Dowden.
You did. And how were those? Were
Good.
Were those
Good.
Okay.
I'm sure we'll get to it, but there was quite a lot of communication between the bridgehead and the incident commander, Mike Dowden, initially.
We will get to it.
I know.
But initially, there was no problem, was there?
Afterwards, yeah.
Afterwards, but not. Okay, but not at that stage.
Significant.
Now, you say in the middle of page 7 that you told him I was taking over from
Yes.
him as bridgehead commander,
Correct.
as I was a rank senior to him.
And I'd been detailed by the incident commander, which I haven't put in there, but that's
Right.
yeah.
Did crew manager Secret give you a handover briefing?
He did.
What did he tell
Well,
you?
I asked him what have you got, which is how we speak to each other. He said they had a job in the kitchen. What are you using? He said we got one line of hose and a BA crew in there. And how much is alive? He said he didn't really know, but it wasn't that bad. That they were making progress. I said to him, "Okay, I'm taking over," and then I said, I detailed him what I said. What I want you to do is get me a second line of hose with a BA crew to deploy a backup jet, get me an IEC pack, and I think there was one further crew in the lobby. Sorry, I forgot to mention a further crew in the lobby at that time, which was crew manager Stern and firefighter Hippel from Kensington were standing by.
Right.
So he went to do that.
Now you say he told me, and I realise it wasn't enough, and that backup crews were required. Is that standard practice for all high-rise fires?
I can explain to you.
Yes, please.
The initial attendance to a high-rise fire could be one fire engine, or it could be two fire engines, depending on the first people to get there. That's what not the initial attendance. Yeah, initial attendance.
That's
So the
different.
first-
That's not the same as predetermined attendance.
No. It's the first people to attend.
Right.
So it's like the first police car to attend to an incident.
Okay.
It's essential that the first fire engine that arrives puts in the building blocks for a successful attack on a fire. And what we first have to do is we have to secure water supply. So locate a hydrant, locate the inlet with dry riser or wet rising main. If it's a wet rising main, we locate the pump room, etc. We secure water to the building, which is what North Kensington did, and set up a bridgehead. The initial attack can be one line of hose. In our national operation guidance, stipulates that when resources allow, a second jet should be laid out. In reality, we like to do it all at once, to have two jets up and running, but it's not always possible.
Right.
because of the dynamics of firefighting and life risk, if we can put in a safe system of work with one jet initially to make an attack, the other one should be, if the PDA is working correctly, have other appliances coming on, as I was, to provide additional resources and backup.
Okay.
Does that make it?
Yes, and thank you for that explanation. So at that stage, is this right? Crew Manager Secret had only deployed one
Correct.
pair of BA wearers
Correct.
with one branch, if
That's
you like.
correct.
And you wanted a second backup pair.
Correct. And a third. I chose to put in another crew for hose management as well,
Right, why was that?
because it's difficult to manage hose. So
Right.
hose when it's charged is unwieldy. If you have two jets, they kink around corners. They're very hard to move. And what can happen, if you've only got a BA crew on the jet, say a 45mm charged 2 or 3 lengths of hose, it can be difficult because the BA crew will have to separate, which we don't like. Firefighters need to stay together for safety reasons and to look out for each other. So if I'm going to a compartment fire and I've only got 2 meters of hose in there and I need 5 meters of hose in there, or I would have to go back as a firefighter and pull hose around the corner. It's very labour intensive.
Yeah.
And if you're in a fire compartment, if you've got guys backing you up to do that for you, it makes sense.
Right, I see. Now, I think you then go on to say that you committed a third crew.
I did.
And do you remember who they were?
I do. So the Hammersmith's pair,
Yes.
NBA, they were on the second jet, I believe, and one of my firefighters is very experienced, the firefighter Hipple. He's done 30 years. He's quite a switched-on guy, and he said to me, "Do you think we could give a hand?" I said, "Actually, lads, you can." I said, "Go under air and help with hose management."
I see, okay. So you had the second crew, first crew Batterby and Brown, second crew the Hammersmith firefighters,
yes.
Barton and O'Hanlon, I think.
Yeah, they're there to protect the first crew.
Yes. And then you had the third crew, this is right, doing hose management.
Correct.
Richard Hipple and another one?
Jamal Stern.
Jamal Stern. Okay, well, we'll come back to what they do later on.
Yeah.
Now, if we look at the bottom of page 7 of your statement, you say you received a message by radio from the BA crew that the fire was out.
Correct.
How long after arriving at the bridgehead did you receive
Long,
that
actually,
message?
5 minutes, 10 minutes. I don't know, but
5
it was
minutes.
pretty quick,
Right, okay, 5 minutes, 10 minutes.
relatively quick. You know,
Okay, and who, do you remember, sent that message?
crew manager Batterby.
Batterby?
Yes.
Right, and, right. Was that by Barry Radio or?
By Barry Radio, yeah. I think, I can't remember exactly, but I contacted them, the BA crew, for a progress report or
Right.
an update,
Right,
and they said the fire's out. So I thought that was a good swift attack, and then we had gotten on top of it.
okay. And then you say, I asked, this is 4 lines up from the bottom, I asked Charlie Batterby, the crew manager from North Kensington, Charlie, is the fire out? He said the fire is out.
Yes,
So, can I just ask, why did you have to ask him that question?
that's what I always ask. Look, to clarify it, when you're at an incident, there's a lot going on. There's a lot of noise, a lot of activity. It's quite action-centric. As a watch manager or an incident commander, I would always double, sometimes triple check issues regarding fire spread. So when it's like a bit like the police, we repeat things twice.
I see. Okay.
So it's there's clarification on radio transmission.
Right.
So I say, is the fire out? And he goes, I said, can you confirm? Is what I would say. Can you confirm the fire is out? He said, answer yes, which is how we speak.
Okay. So, the way you remember it, did you radioed him and he told you, and then you asked for the
Yes,
confirmation,
yes.
or did he?
He could possibly have
radio first?
radioed me, but we had this conversation on the radio.
Okay. And did you have any difficulties with communication?
None.
Hearing him at that stage?
None whatsoever.
No. Okay. Now, pausing there, we have in the incident log a message timed, or rather in the ORR, a message timed at 01:21:15 as the time of that message, which is well, you can see it's about 8 minutes after you came into the building. Would that be about right in terms of your recollection?
Could be.
Okay.
I don't
Now,
know.
and we also know that Batterby tallied in at 01:32:11. So he then comes down. You say at the bottom of page 7 of your statement, I asked the BA crews to come and see me because that's my manner to make face-to-face contact.
Correct, yeah.
I asked Charlie Batterby, the crew manager from North Kensington, Charlie, is the fire out? He said the fire is out. Was that we discussed that a minute ago as if that's a radio discussion. I'm just wondering whether, in fact,
This was a face-to-face discussion.
That was a face-to-face
Yes.
discussion. I see. So, but the message that you've just been talking about was one over the radio.
On the radio, and then I said, come and see me. Over the radio, I said, come and see me.
Okay.
Which is, again, it's not uncommon for incident commanders to do that, or sector commanders.
Right. Okay. I probably rushed you a little bit here. So let me just see.
You
if
have
we
a
can
bit,
get
actually. I was going to explain
yes.
that there was radio. This is
Let's take it slowly. Let's just go.
so every fire we would go to, if it's extinguished, just this very specific detail, I would say every experienced watch commander or operational officer will ask for verification of details over the radio first and then face to face.
Right.
Because it is a very important communication. If you say the fire is out, it's a big communication. It's an important one.
Yes, I understand. So just to take it a bit more in stages than we were, you have the discussion over the radio.
Yes.
Either he radios you or you radio him.
Yes.
He tells you the fire is out. You ask him to confirm. He says yes.
Yes.
We have that radio message timed at 01:21:15. He then comes down to the bridgehead. Is this
Correct.
right? And you then have a face-to-face debrief.
Yeah, he's still wearing breathing apparatus because
Yes.
he's come to see me, which is, I think, polite of him anyway. He could have gone to the BA board and shut down first, but he came straight to see me because I wanted him to come and see me. I was standing to the right of the BA board,
Yes.
and I just said to him, face to face, can you confirm the fire's out? He said yes. I said good job.
Right.
Something along those lines.
Okay. And now we have him. Sorry, let me ask you.
Excuse me.
When you had that face-to-face conversation, had he yet tallied back in?
No.
I see. Okay. Did he tally back in after that conversation?
After that conversation, because I told him to go and do a fire ground air test because things had gone wrong during the conversation.
Right.
As I was speaking to him, things started to, information started coming in. I heard shouts and screams as we were talking.
Yes, and you say that in your statement at the
Yeah.
bottom of page 7. We'll come to
Yes.
that in just a moment, just before we do. After that conversation, before he tallied in, did you see him then tally
No.
in? You don't.
I told him to go, do a fire ground air test. I had more urgent matters to attend to immediately.
And what about firefighter Brown?
Didn't see him.
Didn't see him.
No.
So you didn't have a debrief with him?
No. My assumption is that firefighter Brown went to the BA board.
Right.
Again, it's an assumption. I would say they had a conversation. Charlie probably said, I'm going to talk to the watch manager.
Yes.
And, yeah.
Yes. And we have a tally-in time for firefighter Batterby of 1:32:11. So he did. We know that he did tally in. And just to go back and press a little bit, do you think the conversation that you had with him about what he'd seen, the fire being out, was before he tallied in?
Yes.
It was. Okay.
When you say tallied in, that's not the terminology we use. Shut down is what we say. If you shut down your set, does mean after you've had a wear, you shut it down. Or you report to engine control and you get your tally back. But you're using the terminology tally in. We don't use that.
Okay.
We say, well, you put the tally into the engine control board.
Yes.
I'm not being pedantic here, but it's just, is that what you mean?
It is. Yeah, we've got a number of times on our telemetry data, one of which is tally into bodyguard, another is end of wear time, another is bodyguard switched off, and then another one is logged off.
Yeah, well, logged off, you should be logged off immediately. Once you go back to the engine control board, you shut your set down, and then you're logged off by the engine control officer.
And we don't
When you
have,
give your tally back.
we don't have times for logging off for that, but we have him tallying into bodyguard at 01:32:11, end of wear at 01:29:03, and his bodyguard switched off at 0:29:42.
Well, that's accurate.
So yes, it's accurate. It comes from established telemetry data. So,
Yes.
so anyway, I've been using tally into bodyguard, tally into.
That's fine, that's okay.
All right. Thank you.
You're not a firefighter, so you
No, not yet. So that's the tally-in time, and you
Yes.
think the conversation you had was before that. Okay. Now you then say, well, sorry, let me just ask you this. You had a face-to-face discussion with him.
Yeah.
Do you remember whether Charlie Batterby, during that discussion, said anything to you about seeing falling, burning material?
No, absolutely not.
Right. In his oral evidence, Charlie Batterby said that he did report to you that he had seen fire on the exterior.
He didn't.
He didn't tell you?
No, he didn't tell me that. No, he told me the fire was out. That was it.
That was it?
That was it.
Right. Are you clear in your own?
Absolutely certain about it.
Okay. Then at the bottom of page 7, you say, and then in what seemed like seconds, but was probably a minute later, it all changed. There was consternation and shouting. The atmosphere changed very quickly, and everything seemed immediately different. Where was Charlie Batterby at that moment?
Couldn't tell you. I would say, well, I could tell you, but I don't know physically where he was, but he was on the way back to do an A test.
Right.
Meaning he was going to, I've asked him to do an A test quickly because I needed more BA wearers. I knew I would because I had information that the fire was jumping.
Now then, I was about to ask you, when you say it all changed, could you just describe for us what changed?
Went from being a calm, good job, well done, the fire's out, to people screaming, shouting. The radio started, my handheld radio started going with a message saying the fire is jumping. Don't know which firefighter it was, but there's somebody said there's fire on the 5th and the 6th, or there's fire on the 5th.
Right.
There's fire on the 5th.
Okay.
And he kept repeating it in an excited way or in an alarmed way.
So, first of all, you say there was screaming and shouting. Who was
shouting and a couple of screams upstairs? I could hear it.
Right. I'm sorry to.
Consternation is how I would describe it.
So you, standing on the bridgehead, second floor,
Yes.
where you've showed us, could hear screams.
Yes, a scream, shouts, and general commotion.
Right.
And the radio started operating.
Now the screaming, shouting, and general commotion. Was that coming from firefighters or from others?
Probably, I'd say some of the shouts were coming from firefighters,
Right.
but from residents also.
Right. And did residents start coming down? past
Not
the bridgehead?
immediately, but very soon they did.
Right. And we'll come to this shortly, but let me ask
Okay,
you.
there was quite a lot happened in that 5 minutes. So
Right.
much happened.
Right.
Different things where everybody started moving really quickly. The noise became elevated, and the level of alarm became elevated.
Right.
Yeah.
And let's see if I can try and take this in bits.
Okay, that's fine.
So, 5th floor, you say it in your statement, the crew transmitted that there was smoke on the 5th floor.
Correct.
Right. Did you get that information?
I did.
Who did you get that from?
Don't know. A firefighter.
A firefighter.
Can't remember which one it was.
Okay. From your fireground radio.
Correct.
Okay. And was the firefighter who gave you that information inside the tower?
Inside the tower.
Right. Did you know that a firefighter had gone up above the fire floor to
No.
investigate?
No.
Right.
I mean, and the reason I don't know that is because we were the third machine to arrive, and if firefighters from North Kensington were inside the tower, which I would expect them to be, to have their colleagues,
Yeah.
then but I wouldn't know where they were exactly.
And at this stage, Alex Decent-Aubin was running the BA entry
He was,
control.
yes.
Do you know whether he said anything about knowing that a firefighter had gone up?
No, he didn't say anything about it.
Okay. And did Mr. Secret, did he
No.
tell you that someone had gone up into the...
No.
No. Okay. And to be clear, you say the crew transmitted there was smoke on the 5th floor. Smoke or anything more
Smoke.
than smoke? And so no reference to fire on the 5th floor?
There was other information, and they seemed alarmed, but I can't remember what it was, but they said it's smoke. I think they said heavy smoke logging.
Right.
And,
Now-
and then I had a BA crew come to me, which was crew manager Stern and firefighter Hipple came. They were on the rear. They came down to the bridgehead, and they said to me, "Governor, someone said there's a fire on the 5th floor."
Right. I'm just going to come back to that in
Yes, okay.
just a moment. Before I do, can I ask you, when you heard a firefighter tell you by your fireground radio that there was smoke on the 5th floor, did you communicate that to Mike Dowden?
I did, but I think I did. I think I most certainly would have done, but I can't recall exactly what I said to him.
Right. How did you, or did you think you communicated that to him?
By radio.
Right. Did he respond? Do you remember?
I can't recall, but I can recall about a minute later calling him on my radio and exactly what we said to each other.
What was that?
Well, I sent the crew that came down to me to investigate. I must say I wasn't overly concerned because you will get smoke travel. As far as I was concerned, they had extinguished the fire, but that in doing so, some smoke had gone, during the process, smoke had travelled up to the 5th floor. So, again, that's not unusual at a fire. So I sent a BA crew to investigate.
Yeah. But you also said that you heard screaming and consternation.
Yeah, shouts and general consternation or noise.
Yeah.
And I sent the BA crew there, and they went there really quickly.
Right.
It seemed like seconds to me, and they said they actually reported to me that they were on the 6th floor.
Okay, we're getting ahead just a bit too quickly. I'm sorry. Can I just take it slightly more slowly?
Yes.
Because I know there's a lot that happened. I just want to try and take it in pieces.
There was a lot happening there.
You say you had a conversation with Mike Dowden by radio a minute later, after being told that there was smoke on the 5th floor. Could you just tell me?
When there was smoke reported, I would have said to him, "There's smoke reported." That's the sort of thing that you would say to your colleague or incident commander.
Okay. Did he respond to that?
I can't remember.
Okay.
I do not remember. There was
Right.
quite a lot of radio traffic then.
And then you say you committed Stern and Hipple to go to the 5th floor.
Well, when I say committed, I retasked them. They were in BA already.
Where were they standing?
They came down to face me in the bridgehead.
Right. You say they came down.
The stairs. They stood at the entrance to the stairs to the 3rd floor.
Had they already been up?
Yeah, they've been hose management.
I see. Okay. How far up in the building had they gone to do hose management?
They're on the 4th floor.
They were on.
They would, if you're hose managing, you would be between the 3rd and 4th floor at that time.
Would they have been under air?
They were under air, yes.
At that point.
Yes.
So they came back. Do you know why they came back down to the bridgehead?
Because they wanted to tell me there was a problem. They could hear the radio just as well as I could. They possibly have seen something. I don't know exactly, but they're experienced people, those two guys, and they came and said to me quite clearly, there's reports, they said reports of fire on the 5th floor, as opposed to smoke. The radio transmission said smoke, they said fire and smoke, as I recall.
I see.
On the 5th floor.
So, let me see if I can get this right. You'd already tasked Hipple and Stern to go to do hose management on the 4th floor.
On the fire floor, yes.
On the fire floor.
Well, between to help out with the hose.
Yes, and they were doing that under air.
Correct.
So they had already tallied out, as I call it.
Yes.
Yes, and we have their times of tallying out at 0117. That's not to the nearest second. 0117 or so. And then you say they heard the message over the radio that there was fire.
They heard something. They saw something or they heard something.
So they came down to the bridgehead.
Concerned them enough to come and see me personally.
Right. And then they come to the bridgehead and you then tell them to do what?
Go and tell me what's happening on the 5th floor.
On the 5th floor, right.
Yeah. As quickly as you can.
As quickly as they can. And you then, going back to your statement, they then go up. You say they went to the 5th. Is this right?
They went they went to the 5th, and it was, as I found out later, not that night, they went to the 5th and they continued to the 6th.
Did they stop on the 5th? Do you know?
I don't know.
No. They went to the 6th, and you say in your statement, 2 lines down from the top of page 8, I spoke to Jamal Stern via the fireground radio. I can't remember exactly what he said, but it was something like, it's fucked, it's going, it's completely smoked out this floor.
That's what he said.
That's what he said to you?
Yeah, more or less.
Okay.
He was quite alarmed, really alarmed, actually.
Okay. And what did you tell them to do?
When I immediately transmitted the message to the incident commander.
Right.
I said it's jumping, the fire's jumping, Mick, as I know him as.
Right.
And he said, I know, I can see it on the outside, he said it. And he wasn't because he wanted me to understand what he was saying. He was heightened, or his senses were heightened. I said, it's jumping. I said, it's going on the 5th and the 6th. And he said, I know, I can see it jumping on the outside. It was happening simultaneously, that he could see what was happening outside, whereas I could see, or hear, not see, hear what was happening on the inside.
I see. So when you told him what you'd been told by Jamal and Stern on the 6th floor, you reported that to Mike Dowden and you had a conversation about that. And he said, I know, I can see it's jumping on the outside.
I told him to make pumps 8, but I advised him to make pumps 8.
Okay.
I said, make it 8, and he said, I'm doing it.
Okay.
And then I said to him, well, okay, I'll let you.
Yes, okay, we'll come to that. Just before we do, were you concerned at that stage?
Extremely.
Okay, what were you concerned about?
A fire spreading up into other apartments.
Right.
Well, I thought we'd get on top of it.
Okay.
We've had fire spread before, and my plan was to flood it with BA and firefighting equipment to get hold of it. That's what we do.
Now, we've got, at that stage, just summarising it, we've got you at the bridgehead knowing that there's fire on the 5th floor and the 6th floor, and we've got Mike outside who can see what's happening outside.
Yes.
Did you have a discussion with Mike Dowden about evacuation of the 5th floor or 6th floor?
Not at that time.
Is there a reason why that wasn't a subject for discussion?
The reason was, my understanding of it is that as a bridgehead commander, I'm faced with fire spread and possibly other persons involved, and that the fire is moving really quickly, rapidly, but I thought we'd get it. So my communication with him was to give me everybody he had spare on the fire ground in BA now, with firefighting kit.
With fire, okay. You say, I thought we'd get it. Do you mean that you thought you'd be able to extinguish the fire without any evacuation?
Yes.
What made you think that?
Experience.
Had you experienced fire spread of this nature before?
Not that quickly.
Not that quickly. So, in the light of the fact that you hadn't seen fire spread that quickly before, how did your experience help you to decide that you shouldn't evacuate at that stage?
Because I thought it had jumped 2 floors We already had two BA crews with jets in. We had one BA crew come out. We already had two charged jets in there. And if I was had to have additional jets and crews, I knew what we had on the fire ground at that time. I thought we could stop it, at least try to stop it. And you're asking me about we didn't discuss evacuation. Well, we did of sorts about 30 seconds after that.
What was that discussion?
Rescues.
Rescues.
It's a type of evacuation, but it's a rescue. Multiple rescues.
And who did you have that discussion with?
Mike Dowden.
Do you remember what you said to him?
Not exactly. We had multiple calls for sort of coming in immediately. I wasn't aware the fire was jumping up through the building. And can I have a break?
Absolutely. Of course you can. Absolutely.
You'd like to take a break?
Yes,
now?
I would.
Yes, of course. No, we'll do that. 10 minutes?
Yes.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Don't discuss your evidence, please. We'll come back at 10:30, please. Mr. Millett, while we're waiting for Mr. O'Keefe, I think it would be sensible if we ran for another, say, 40 minutes or
Yes.
thereabouts,
Yes.
and then had another break for your benefit.
I think so.
Yeah.
Correct. Yes, we can now have him back.
I think he's on his way.
Thank you.
Are you comfortable to carry on,
I am, sir.
Mr. O'Keefe?
Yes.
I think we'll all benefit from a few breaks during the morning, so I've asked Mr. Millett to find a convenient time in about 40 minutes. Do you think that's all right?
Ideal. Thank you.
Right, we'll do that. Thank you.
Mr. O'Keefe, thank you. Now, I just want to, if I can, just go back to what we were looking at just before the break, which was a discussion that you had with Mike Dowden about rescue.
Yeah.
Now, my question is, against the context of you having sent Hipple and Stern up and they've reported to you, do you think the discussion you had with Mick Dowden, about rescue was after you'd heard Jamal and Stern report to you that there was fire on the 6th floor?
Not immediately afterwards.
Not immediately after. How long afterwards, do you think?
I can't exactly say, but not long. We started getting calls, people in the building,
Right.
because the fire was spreading.
Okay. And can you tell us what you said to Mike Dowden about rescue?
That we were receiving. I said that we were receiving calls from people saying that their family members were trapped by smoke, or they were affected by smoke.
And
And that would indicate to him that we would need to start putting in a rescue operation. That was the conversation.
so you said that to him, that you
Yes.
were receiving calls?
Yes.
Right. And what did he say to you?
But they were also receiving calls outside.
Right. Just pausing there then. Where were you receiving calls?
On the
from?
radio, I believe firefighters St. Oban got some information. I think some firefighters came down. I can't recall exactly. There was so much activity.
Right.
And crew manager Stern and firefighter Hipple reported to me that they had information that somebody was trapped on the 16th floor,
Okay.
which I found very, very unusual.
Okay. That jumps ahead in time a little bit.
Okay.
A little bit far. But we'll definitely come back to that.
Okay.
It's important. But just in terms of the discussion that you had with Mike Dowden, so you were getting information. You said, I think, through Alex Deason-Orbin. Do you know where he was getting that information?
I would say on his radio.
On his radio. Do you remember him receiving it on his radio?
No.
Do you remember any firefighters coming at that stage, to we're still early on, to the bridgehead with pieces of paper?
No, that was pieces of paper. It didn't happen that quickly.
Right. And so, and do you know where Mike Dowden was getting his information from about people?
Main scheme radio,
Right.
and then from his driver who was on the initial command pump.
Okay, thank you. Now, going back to your statement. Sorry, before we do, was your conversation with Mike Dowden? Did you have a conversation with him about evacuation or?
No.
And was there a discussion, for example, about evacuating everybody on the 5th floor or everybody on the 6th floor?
No.
Can you help? Why didn't you discuss that?
I would say the circumstances were very exceptional.
Right.
Something that was happening we'd never seen this before or experienced it at the rate it was happening. I think that was to the forefront of certainly to my thoughts. And I wasn't looking at the building from the outside, which I would imagine was quite dramatic,
Right.
for want of a better word, but it was quite severe, probably a better word.
Yes. Now, on page 8 of your statement, you say, after Jamal and Stern had reported to you what they found on the 6th floor, 4 lines down, I knew then that there was fire spread.
Yeah, I did.
What did you think about how far further the fire might spread?
As I said earlier on, I thought we could get it, because that's normally what happens. If the compartmentation in a building is correct and functioning, as it should do,
Right.
it should stop the spread of fire. Occasionally you will get adaptations to a building where services are installed, or for whatever reason a fire door is damaged, that would undermine the integrity of the compartmentation. So if it did spread, that could be those could be the reasons. I genuinely thought it was spreading on the inside. But when Mike, our watch manager down, said to me I could see it jumping on the outside, and then I had firefighters very quickly running in telling me what's actually happening outside.
What did you think at that moment about whether compartmentation was holding?
I thought it had failed internally, just between a couple of flats.
You thought it failed into...
Possibly gone up the communal stairwell.
Right. Okay.
Something unseen had broken out. That is normally what happens. You get hidden fire travel. It's quite common in voids.
Right.
And they had broken out and just went.
Okay. So your view, just to summarise it, I hope I've got this right, is that you thought at that time that compartmentation had failed, it had failed internally.
Locally.
Internally.
Inside, yeah, that was
Yes,
my understanding. Yeah.
Okay. And did that prompt any thoughts about whether there was then a risk of further failure of compartmentation internally higher up the building than the 6th floor?
No.
Why is
Not to the extent of where it went that quickly.
Okay.
That's my honest answer, really. It's my accurate answer.
And at that stage, you think you've got internal compartmentation failure in the building, fire on 2 floors above the fire floor.
Yeah.
What did you think was the correct procedure now to follow in order to deal with what you had in front of you?
Bring in additional resources and extinguish the fire.
Okay, so firefighting.
Attack the fire, yeah.
Attack the fire. Now, you then go on to say, in this 5th line down from the top of page 8, some of the residents started self-evacuating.
They did.
They looked frightened and had black smoke marks on their faces.
They did, yes, that's correct.
From that moment onwards, we just started carrying out rescues. Now, just in terms of residents, were they coming past you at the bridgehead?
They were being escorted past me by firefighters.
Okay, all of them, or were some of them self-evacuating?
Some of them by themselves, some of them being escorted by firefighters. They looked confused and frightened.
What did the black smoke marks tell you about how the fire was behaving?
That the smoke was travelling. They'd gone through smoke.
Right. Did it
They'd been in smoke or walked through smoke to exit the building.
Did it look as if they were suffering seriously from smoke
Not
inhalation?
seriously, but significant. It doesn't take much smoke to to injure somebody.
No. Okay. Do you know which floors these residents had come
No.
down from? Did you speak to any of them?
I didn't speak to the resident. Pardon me. I didn't speak to the residents. I was speaking to firefighters.
Right. And what did the fact that, as you've told us, some of them were self-evacuating, what did that tell you about whether the building's stay-put policy, which was still a safe policy to pursue?
So I can repeat the question.
Yes, sorry. You could see some of these residents self-evacuating.
Yes.
What did that tell you anything about whether the
They wanted to leave the building. There was smoke and they were frightened.
Yes, but did that tell you anything about whether the building's stay-put policy was still a safe policy to pursue?
No, I wasn't thinking about that.
Right. Did that tell you anything about where the smoke was to be found on the higher floors?
What it told me is that there was smoke. There was 2 floors involved, and these people were possibly from those floors.
Right. And how long, roughly, after crew manager Batterby had left the bridgehead, did you see... Sorry, let me ask the question in a different way. Did you see the residents coming down past you with smoke inhalation before or after crew manager Batterby had left the bridgehead?
Afterwards.
Afterwards. Next question, how long afterwards do you think?
3 or 4 minutes.
Right, thank you, yeah. And you then say, in your statement, from that moment onwards, we just started carrying out rescues. When you say just,
Well, that's just the way I speak. That's what we were doing. We were firefighting and rescues.
I was going to ask you, you say firefighting and rescues.
Yes.
So it wasn't only rescues, it was
No,
firefighting.
it was firefighting and rescues. I was still, as a bridgehead commander, I was still pursuing the orthodox way of fighting a high-rise fire.
Right.
All I was doing was increasing my resources, or asking for additional resources.
Right.
I was dealing with a problem, it's a dynamic situation of fire, and it can change, and we try to adapt our procedures, but by and large, we stick with the fundamentals of high-rise firefighting.
And did you prioritise firefighting over rescue, or rescue over firefighting, or both the same?
It was simultaneous action. That's what it was. But our prime directive or purpose is saving lives, so that would become for anything else.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And did you give firefighters who were coming to the bridgehead and being committed under air instructions as to rescue?
Yes.
What were those instructions?
The floor number, flat number, and number of persons, and the conditions. I mean, smoke and fire conditions.
Now
So the information is quite succinct in that it will tell you which floor the flat is on, and the flat number, and the number of persons in the flat, and if available, conditions.
Right. Now, I'd like to try and be as precise as I can with
Okay.
you about the timing of that, when you started to receive that information. Roughly how long after you started carrying out rescues, that decision was made to carry out rescues, did you start getting information about flat and floor number?
Pretty immediately, actually. From residents, people were telling us, physically telling us, so-and-so is in this flat or in this floor, can you go and get them? And information on the radio. It was all happening at once, very quickly,
Right. Okay. So, and I'm sorry to be
No, that's fine. I understand your
pick
question.
this apart a bit. So were there residents coming down who were stopping at the bridgehead and saying to you, so-and-so is on floor?
No, the firefighters were telling us, they were getting information from the residents as we were bringing them out, and they were telling us.
Right, okay. And just in terms of that information, the BA wearers coming down with residents, communicating that to you, was that being recorded on the bridgehead anywhere in any way?
To my understanding, it was on a forward information board, which is a piece of. It's something we use. It's a template,
Right.
and there's I think there's 4 separate parts. It's quite large, about the size of this lectern actually, and it's there's information for plans. High-rise map, and locations of individuals requiring rescue, or locations within the building of fire. So what you do is it's just like a copybook, laminated copybook.
Okay, and so you're recording information onto that. Who was doing the recording? Do you remember?
At the very beginning,
Yes.
firefighter St. Alban was recording it on the BA board, I would imagine.
Right.
I would guess, because I can't remember if we had the fib. I know I asked for a fib, or for a forward information board. But
And after that?
after that was firefighter O'Byrne.
Okay, and that was on the board. Did there come a time when either Alex de St. Aubin or firefighter O'Byrne started recording information on the wall?
Yes,
With a China- with a China
that time came when firefighter O'Byrne shouted to me. So he was over by the lift doors, and I was committing people, giving them information, the firefighters up the stairs, and he said, "Governor, look." He shouted to me, he said, "It's full." And it was actually full, which is highly unusual.
I was going to ask you, had you ever seen that before?
Never.
Right. Okay, so let's just pause there with that and
Okay.
just go back to the other source of information you were getting about persons trapped in the building. You said it come from residents, you've explained that, but it had also come from elsewhere. I think you said through the radio.
Also, at this time, there was a good officer turned up. It was Watson, Watch Manager Watson from Hammersmith.
Right.
And I know you haven't asked me too much about the radio traffic yet.
Not yet.
I'm sure you will. But Watch Manager Watson is a very calm individual, very composed, good officer. He started giving me information. He became my go-to guy to pass information to Watch Manager Dowden and to get information from the fireground outside.
Okay.
So what he was doing was running up and down the stairs, and then he started to bring pieces of paper with information on fire survival guidance calls.
Right. Now we've gone quite far ahead. Let's just
I
see if
understand that, yeah.
That's okay. Right? It's good. We can capture it. Roughly what time did Watch Manager Watson appear on the bridgehead?
I can't give you a time.
I mean, was it a long time after you'd started collecting the fire survival guidance calls?
Not a long time, but too long for me. I was alone.
Okay.
As an officer, I was quite I was overtasked.
Yeah. And when he did arrive, we can get the times perhaps another way. But
Yes.
when Mr. Watson arrived, where was he standing?
On the balcony.
Okay. And he was giving his information that he was getting to you.
To us.
To you.
It would be us collectively.
Right.
He would be handing that information to Justin O'Byrne or to Firefighter O'Byrne, I would imagine.
I see. So the communication was Watson O'Byrne, was it?
Pardon?
The communication was between Mr. Watson and Firefighter O'Byrne.
And me and everybody else who was on the bridgehead at that time.
Okay. And was that by radio or
No, verbally.
verbally?
Face to face.
Was he shouting?
No, speaking. He doesn't shout.
Right. And where was he getting that information from?
From the fireground.
From the fireground. And by what method of communication?
I'd say face to face, knowing him.
Right. Okay. Well, we'll have to explore that a little bit later. But just coming back then to page 8, and quite early on, I think, in the incident, you then go on to say it became very clear. This is 8 lines down from the top of page 8, that there was significant smoke in the main stairwell.
Yeah, it did.
How did you discover that?
Crew Manager Stern and Firefighter Hipple, when they reported to me that there was, they received a fire survival guidance call to the 16th floor. I think it was the 16th floor. I think it's on my statement. That when they went there, they reported to me, and I don't think it was by radio. I think it's when they came back because the comms weren't really working. When the firefighters went up higher, that it was on fire.
Right, I see. Okay, so that information came down to you by radio from Hippo.
Yeah, and I radioed that to I think I radioed. I know I got that information to. Actually, I did radio to Watch Manager Dowden, and that's when I said to him, "Make it 10, make pumps 10."
Okay.
And he said, "I'm doing it.
Right. Okay. You're about 5 minutes ahead of me, which is
I'll slow down.
Which is good.
Right.
No, that's fine. So you radio down to Mike Dowden. You say. As I realised that we very quickly realised we required much more BA to respond to what was happening and to conduct rescues. And then you say, I told him pumps 8 on the radio to increase attendance, and he said, I'm doing it. I made pumps 8. Now, we have a time for pumps 8, but I just want to be clear about this smoke in the stairwell. Do you think that you got the information from Hipple and Stern about smoke in the stairwell before the discussion about pumps 8? Or afterwards?
No, it was afterwards.
I see. Okay. Right. Now, on pumps 8, doing your best to remember, when you spoke to him, had he already made pumps 8, or was he telling you?
I think he was. I think great minds think alike. I mean, he's an operational watch manager like myself. Right. I can recall walking backwards while I was speaking to him onto the balcony to look to try and see what was going on outside. I saw a big sheet of flame falling down outside the building.
Right.
And I saw him running on the radio. So, 2 things unusual.
Yes.
A big sheet of flame falling down and a watch manager actually running, which we don't see, which you shouldn't do. I don't mean that because we're lazy. It's you have to be calm, remain calm and composed and take in information. It's command and control. If a watch manager is running, there's something seriously wrong.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, in terms of timing, the short incident log has the make pumps 8 message timed at 01:19:08.
Okay.
And we looked earlier on at the message coming down to BA entry control about the fire in flat 16 put out at 1:21. So it looks...
that tallies in with the next bit of information from that crew on 16.
Right, just in terms of the order of things though, it looks as if the message to make pumps 8, or the decision to make pumps 8 that you discussed with Mike Dowden actually happened before you were told that the fire in flat 16 was out.
Okay, that's a time issue. For me, it's quite compressed that moment.
Okay.
And throughout the night, I don't know any time. I didn't look at my watch once, actually.
No, I understand.
I didn't have time to.
Yeah, I understand. Now, just in terms of that, I think you're saying, correct me if I'm wrong about that, you wouldn't disagree with that if I was to put those times to you and say...
It seems like it's out of sequence, but that's how I remember it.
Yeah. Okay.
The make pumps 8 went when I found out the fire had jumped to the 5th and 6th. The make pumps 10 would have been when we started getting FSGs, our fire survival guidance calls, elsewhere in the building.
Yes. Now, in your statement on page 8, you say in the middle of the page, as I was speaking to Mike Dowden, I walked out onto the glass balcony and I could see flames falling down outside the building, and I thought, that's odd. Just pausing there, was that the first time that you'd seen flaming material coming off the building?
Yes.
And what were your thoughts about that?
That we had a problem, a big problem.
Was it something you'd ever seen?
Because it wasn't just a particle, it was like a so the front of the desk here, it was that size, and it was on fire, and it was falling, and it was diagonal. I can remember it now. So yeah.
Right. So I'm trying to get an idea of the size of the front of the desk.
That's quite significant.
5 by 3.
On fire, falling from a building.
Yes.
Whereas when I walked into the building, it was a flat fire.
Had you ever seen anything like that before?
Yeah. On a building that's been fully involved, they fall apart.
Right.
So not. I mean, I've seen it at, just to be specific here. Have I ever seen anything like that at the beginning of an incident, or where I didn't know that the building was on fire outside? No.
Had you ever seen flaming bits falling off a building so early on in an incident?
No.
Right. And what did that tell you about how the fire was developing?
That it was developing rapidly.
Did it tell you anything about what it was that was burning?
No. I before this event, I mean, everyone knows about cladding. No, we didn't have that awareness. It wasn't our reality.
No.
I know new building materials are being developed constantly, but the majority of the fires that London Fire Brigade attends are in traditional structures or have been previously. I think that's changing.
Right. While we're on that subject, can I just ask a question?
Yeah.
At any time in late 2016, early 2017, really in the months leading up to Grenfell Tower, do you remember ever seeing or hearing about a letter that the London Fire Brigade had written to London local authorities about tall buildings and the risk of fire spread on the exterior?
No.
Okay. Now you then go on in the next paragraph to say, on page 8, seconds later, when I realised that we were losing the fire, or that the fire was getting away from us, I transmitted make pumps 10, make pumps 10. And he said, I'm making pumps 10, and sounded very excitable. Now, short incident log has us with that message at 01:24:29. Make pumps 10 at 01:24:29. And you say, I realised we were losing the fire. Did you discuss that thought with Mike Dowden?
Yeah.
What
He
did
was frantic.
what did
I
you
can't
say?
remember the exact words, but it was frantic traffic between him and I. I was, I suppose it was a priority message I sent from the bridgehead for everybody in BA is actually what I said.
Right.
I said, everyone you got spare, I want them now. Here now, I wanted them.
Yes.
We were outgunned completely. It just happened so quickly.
Sure. And that message went to Mike Dowden, did it?
Yes.
Did you think that pumps 10 would give you enough resources to cater for what you were seeing in front of you?
I suppose in the 60 seconds afterwards, no.
Right. Did you think about going straight to 25?
I wasn't outside. I couldn't see what he was saying. He did though.
He did.
He made it up really quickly. From that moment onwards, from make pumps 10, that's actually would be a good idea when Paul Watson, the watch manager, turned up.
Yes. And
Because I
think
couldn't get in contact with watch manager Dowden after that. It was great difficulty.
after what?
After the pumps 10, immediately afterwards, the radios just went full of traffic, and I just couldn't transmit any more information.
Right, that's... So after pumps 10, that's 1:24:29,
Yeah.
you say that's when you lost contact with Mike
That's when we
Dowden.
had difficulty. That's when it began.
Okay. And after that, 1:24:29, how soon after that did Watch Manager Watson appear on the scene at the bridgehead?
Pretty soon afterwards.
Okay.
You can find out, if I can offer just one bit of information, by looking at Golf 361 booking status 3 at the incident. He was the officer in charge of that appliance, and I would imagine he had a good look around for himself to see what was going on, and then spoke to the incident commander, Watch Manager Dowden, and then being tasked to come and see me.
Yes. Yeah, thank you. And we've got G361 status 3 at 01:25:06, just to give you a time fix on that. So only about a minute later. So that would make... is that consistent with your recollection?
Utterly consistent, yeah.
And you say also you called for additional BA and additional BA control boards. Did those arrive?
They did. I asked for additional BA boards, additional IC packs, additional hose, breaking in kits, everything we needed to try and stop the fire.
And you then go on to say at the middle of the last paragraph on page 8, at this point conditions in the building were deteriorating very rapidly.
They were, yeah.
Are you talking about smoke spread or...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fire spread, actually.
And fire spread as well?
Well, the FSG codes were saying that there was fire on multiple floors.
Yes. We see that at the top of page 9, and we'll come to that in a moment. You then go on to say there was some light smoke on the second floor, but it was acrid, which stung my eyes and throat. I've never encountered it in my life. Now, just pause there. This is light smoke at the bridgehead, is it?
When the doors were open, it wafted in. It wasn't
Right.
a lot of it, but it was acrid. And I've never encountered in my life is the police interviewer, I think, filtering what I'm saying. But I didn't really say that. I've never encountered, because I've encountered most types of smoke.
Right.
In my 25 years in the fire brigade. But I think that is a bit dramatic from the police officer. She was a very good interviewer, but I hasten to add, but just police officers sometimes filter what you say.
Yes.
And I know I had an opportunity to review that document, but I didn't pay any great attention to these. So there are inaccuracies throughout the document, but they're not significant.
No. Then just to get your recollection as you
Yes.
stand here, Was there anything about the smoke that that stands out in your memory?
Acrid, but smoke is often acrid.
Yeah, and what did that tell you, if anything, about what was burning?
Well, normally with acrid smoke, it's plastic or rubber based, which I know we'll get to, but that's what you get from plastics. And there, as you know, there are many types, and rubber. They're oil based, but there are also chemicals in them, toxic chemicals, or the byproducts like hydrogen cyanides and so on.
Yes.
So as soon as that gets in your throat or your eyes, it'll sting you because it's poison.
Right, and was that what you were experiencing?
Briefly, yeah, but I'm used to that sort of thing.
Yes.
I've never experienced this in my life.
All right.
It's a slight exaggeration, that one.
Okay, well, we can take that as we find it then. Now, you then say at the top of page 9, well, sorry, just before we go on, did you communicate to anybody that you could now smell even a small amount of acrid?
No, it's normal
smoke.
in a structural fire.
Right. You say at the bottom of page 8, 3 lines up from the bottom, of course what I couldn't see was that outside the flames had gone up, outside the building. Did you, at that stage, when you were make pumps 10, is that right? You couldn't see? But
I couldn't see, no.
So what made... Okay, but did you have any clue at that stage that the exterior of the building was on fire?
Yes, the firefighters told me.
Right, okay. So you knew it, but you couldn't see it?
Yeah, well, it's no, I mean, we look out for each other, so we pass information. There's a constant stream of information. It's very important. So if something changes on the fire ground, it is communicated. I mean, the textbook will say the incident commander must communicate any changes. The incident commander is busy doing other is command and control. The firefighters communicate with each other really well.
Yes.
So if they notice there's some hazard within any incident, they'll tell each other so you don't get caught out by it and injured. So the firefighters coming up to me or telling me that I had jumped up outside the building and I was going up towards the roof.
Right. And it was going up towards the roof. Right. Now, at the top of page 9, you say, at the bridgehead we then began to receive multiple requests of rescue from residents, and at the same time I began to receive fire survival guidance, FSG, calls. Just to be clear on timing again, if I can, was that before or after the make-up to 10 pumps?
Before.
Before? Long before?
I would say not very long before, but long before, yeah. That's why I mean, making pumps 10 at a high-rise fire wouldn't be that unusual if the fire is spreading, but...
Yes.
Yes, it was before.
And you use the expression fire survival guidance calls. Could you just, and you go on to say, a fire survival guidance call is where a member of the public who has a fire in their building calls fire brigade control. And you go on to explain the advice that is given. These fire survival guidance calls you were getting, is that what we discussed before, the information that you were getting either from the BA wearers coming down with residents or through the communication?
Correct, and people coming back into the building, or trying to get back into the building.
From the fire ground, and people coming back into the building?
Residents were trying to get access to the building. Right.
So when you say you were getting calls, that's not from control, that's information...
Not me directly from control, no. The system we use, sir, is the instant command pump will receive fire survival guidance from our control and transmit that to the instant commander or somebody who's helping the instant commander.
Yes.
And that's transmitted to the fire sector.
Yes. And you explain, in fact, exactly that, just halfway down the first paragraph on page 9. You say, the information is then transmitted to either the brigade appliance in attendance or a command unit stating location, flat number, floor, number of persons involved in their location within the building. That's how it gets to the command unit. And the command unit is either the incident command pump, is this right? Or a full-blown CU?
a full-blown CU. It's the initial command pump. So as soon as control hears that we're making, first of all, if control have multiple calls, you get a command unit anyway. They're on a PDA, I think maybe comes 4, and lots of triggers. You know, with persons involved, you will always get a command unit. So the command unit would have been there pretty quickly, I think.
Right. You say a command unit is on a PDA for 4
No,
pumps?
there are triggers.
Right.
It depends on the level of command required
Yes.
and communication systems required. So that's what they are. It's a mobile command center.
Yes. Yes, so I think are you saying, so I can place this in policy, when multiple calls are received, the command unit is ordered up automatically?
Yes.
Right. And I think for those who are interested, that's in policy, that's in the mobilisation policy 412.
There is a mobilisation policy. I wouldn't know what the number is offhand, but yeah, I've read it.
Okay, and it's paragraph 2.14 for those who are interested in it. But that is what you know, is it?
Yes. So you have the initial command pump, which is the go-to focal point for the incident, which is so you have, for example, Golf 271, Golf 272. One of those appliances will be pumping, and the other appliance will be used as a command unit,
Right.
staffed by a command support officer, which could be a firefighter. And so that's where people book in when they come,
Right.
the roll call board, and that's where all the radio traffic comes through.
Okay.
So it's a temporary, but mostly a temporary command post.
And we're going to have a break in just a few minutes,
Okay.
Mr. O'Keefe. But before we do, can I ask you, how, when you have multiple calls, does the information, the FSG information, normally go from the command unit to the bridgehead? What's the normal route of communication?
The normal route of communication would be by radio,
Direct.
if it's possible.
So CU radio channel.
They get the information from they have a dedicated emergency line which we use for FSG calls, and then it's staffed by officers, additional officers, and that information is recorded, but it can be brought to the bridgehead physically,
Right.
which is probably better, and it's recorded on the forward information board, and it's used so you'd have the information logged on it's a FSG poster, which is a large format, that can be brought to the bridgehead, but it's recorded in quadruple forms,
Yes.
and so the forms can be handed out to various people, pardon me, but it will be transmitted as well.
Will be transmitted as well. So
That's what it was. That was happening at the very beginning of the fire in Grenfell Tower.
Right. So at the very beginning, it was coming by radio, was it?
Radio and verbally,
And verbally.
and pieces of paper.
Right. Well, we'll pursue that a little bit more
Okay.
later on. I wonder whether now maybe
Good
could be
point.
for a break.
Yes, we'll have another break now, Mr.
Okay,
O'Keefe.
thank you, sir.
We'll all have a bit longer. We'll have quarter of an hour, back at 11:25.
Okay.
And please don't talk to anyone
I
about
won't.
your evidence. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Right, 25 past, please. Skip. All right, Mr. O'Keefe.
Okay, sir.
Yes, thank you very much. Yes, Mr. Millett.
So we were discussing before the break, Mr. O'Keefe, the normal system of communication, and I just want to get from you the system of communication of fire survival guidance information from the CU, the command unit, to the bridgehead during the various different stages of the incident while you were at the bridgehead.
Okay.
Just first of all, so at the very start, what was the method of communication of fire survival guidance information
At the
from
very start, it was
from the CU?
verbally and on the radio,
Right,
and there afterwards it was pieces of paper,
right,
as I recall,
okay.
and
And where would and who would bring the pieces of paper to the bridgehead? Do you remember?
various people as the incident progressed. But
Right.
Watch Manager Watson was the guy who was facilitating, supporting us in the bridgehead.
And what would you do with the information on the pieces of paper? Where would
Transcribe it onto the forward information board, and when that became too full, I instructed firefighter O'Byrne. The word I used was sling it, put all that information up on the wall.
Okay. In general terms, when you had information which from inside the building, from firefighters, either coming back down to the bridgehead or by radio, was there a way of recording that?
Well, the information they would bring to me, if they gave me a flat number, that would go on to the. I would send them to the BA guys to give that information. They'd have to give that information anyway when they're closing down their sets.
Right.
So they would give that information to the I suppose FSG recorder and the intercontrol officer.
And what would happen to that information after that point?
It would be recorded, and the next crew to come would be given that information and assigned to that. If there was a known area where someone needed rescuing, you would immediately assign a crew to it.
Okay.
Oh, that's what I was doing.
And supposing firefighters came down, just in general terms at the moment, came down and said to you, well, we've gone up to flat X and can't find anybody in there, or gone up to flat X and can't get in or can't get onto that floor and have come down, so that it was an unsuccessful deployment.
Yes,
First
which
of all,
happened throughout the night.
yes, would that information be recorded, first of all?
It would be recorded. Yeah.
Where would that be recorded?
It was recorded on the wall, as far as I'm aware.
And would that would the information about would that information then be fed back to ultimately brigade control?
Well, I was feeding the information to Watch Manager Watson because I couldn't use the radio any longer. We weren't able to transmit it, and my understanding is that he would bring out any important information back to the fireground outside.
To the fireground. So, to your recollection, information about successful or failed deployments would be fed back through the method of communication.
Various methods of communication.
And could you just describe those for us?
Verbally, face to face. Can you pass this information on?
Right.
All written down. I didn't write anything down myself because I was too busy. I didn't have time to write.
Right.
But I did speak to Watch Manager Watson quite a lot during the incident.
Right. And he would go where with that information?
Downstairs. He kept going back up and down. He did a lot of walking.
Right.
Running.
And where would he communicate, or to whom would he communicate the
You'd have
information?
to ask Watch Manager Watson that, sir.
All right. And did you have any discussions with Mike Dowden or any later incident commanders about particular failed deployments that you were learning
Yes.
about? Who? tell me?
Group Manager Welsh.
Right. Okay, we'll come to him. Now, do you remember Watch Manager Watson setting up a BA staging area on the mezzanine?
I do.
What sort of point in the night was that? How long after he arrived, perhaps, was that?
Pretty immediately after he arrived, because I told him we had nothing left. And I was on the radio asking for resources. I wasn't getting any response. I was getting frustrated because I had multiple calls for rescue, and I couldn't commit anybody else. I had nobody else left.
And
that was if I could just explain why.
Yes.
That was just after Watch Manager Dolan was making up the incident as quickly as he could, but the resources hadn't arrived yet, and we had committed pretty much all of our equipment and people. Not everybody, of course, because we had to have support on the fire ground and elsewhere, but as many as we could possibly commit,
Right.
we did.
And what was he recording at this forward post, this staging area?
What was he what?
What was he recording? Was he recording information?
Quite possibly, I don't know. He
Right.
was listening to me quite a lot.
Okay.
He's a quite cerebral guy. If you ask him for something, he understands it readily, and was trying to get me get us what we needed on the bridgehead.
Right. And was he communicating with anybody in the lobby of the building on the ground
Yes.
floor? Who was that? Do you know?
I don't know. There were a lot of people. There was a lot of activity on the lobby.
Right.
On the times I looked down the stairs or onto the lobby, there was, well, quite a bit of activity, firefighters and so on.
Do you know where Watson was getting the information that he was passing to you?
From the fireground.
From the fireground?
He would have been getting that from, we will assign as many as we can spare to manage the information coming in.
Right. And he was bringing slips of paper in to you?
And just information, slips of paper.
Right. And do you know where he was getting the information was that he was recording on these slips of paper?
From the exact location, I don't know because I was inside, but he would be getting it from people who were getting the information from our brigade control,
Right.
who were manning the phones, and they were giving this precise information to officers on the fire ground. He was then getting the information and either bringing it himself or sending people with the information to us.
Right. And did you know whether that information had been prioritised so that what you were getting was
Of course,
in a priority
that
list?
is the priority.
Okay.
FSG, when you have an FSG incident, it becomes the priority.
Right. But I think you're saying you don't know exactly where Watson was getting the information.
No, you'd have
He
to
was-
ask that himself, sir.
Right. And do you know whether Watson was receiving pieces of paper from somebody else or creating the pieces of
Receiving.
paper? He was
I
receiving.
do know that, he was receiving.
So he was simply, essentially, a back and forth message, a runner.
He wasn't
that's
that
a-
would be disingenuous to say he was a runner, but he
Not-
was.
It's a rude word, I suppose. But
No,
but-
it's okay. He was a runner.
Right.
And later on in the incident, he even though he's a watch manager, he was a runner, yes.
Right. Now, page 9, you describe 5 lines down, stay put advice. You say, in this case, the advice would have been to stay put. This is because high-rise buildings are generally meant to be constructed so that fires will be contained to the fire floor.
Yeah, that's correct.
So it's far safer for residents of high-rise blocks to stay in their supposedly protected apartments until firefighters can come and rescue them. When you first started getting fire survival guidance calls, did you know what advice was being given by the control room operators to individual residents who were calling?
No, I didn't. And on that point, I asked at one point when Group Manager Welch had arrived, and one of my many discussions with him that night was, Governor, have they lifted the policy yet? And stay put advice. And he said, I don't know.
Yes. You cover that in your statement. Did he, when he arrived, looking ahead, did he agree with you that the stay put policy should be changed?
We didn't have that type of discussion. We had a different discussion when he arrived. Do you want to know about the discussion? When I first saw him, he
Yes.
ran up the stairs against a group manager run as unusual, and he said, I can't recall the exact words. He said B, using an initial for my name. He's obviously found out who I am. What are you doing? Which is normal. You know, what tactics? And the gist was, is it working? And I said no.
Right.
And he said, why not? And I said the duration of the standard duration, that guys couldn't, were either in danger of getting killed themselves, or couldn't reach the upper floors. They were running out of air really quickly.
That was the problem that you communicated to
That was
him.
my big problem, and he said, okay. And he said, what do you need? Oh no, what do we need? I said EDBA, extended duration breathing apparatus. And he said, how much? And I said, all of it. And he said, we can't do that. I said, Governor, we need all of it. I said, we need it now. I said, everything. And I elaborated like I was trying to sell the idea to him.
Right.
I said, I'll get all the FRUs here, get the CBR, and I said, there's loads of guys with an EDBA ticket, as I have, which is a qualification, in London. I said, we need them here now. I said, otherwise we're not going to reach these people.
Right.
That's why. That was the, and he thought, I could see him thinking, he was listening, and he said, okay, we'll do that. And he ran back downstairs.
Okay.
Well, he also said, I'm taking over as fire sector commander. That was the first thing he said.
Okay. In fact, we have the first deployment of EDBA wearers. And there's no need to look at the telemetry data, but we have their first deployment at around 156.
Paddington?
Yes.
Yeah.
Paddington, a firefighter crew from Paddington.
Line rescue crew, a line ops crew.
Yes.
I remember it.
Crew manager Wigley.
The crew manager Wigley, yeah.
Now, was that before or after Group Manager Welch arrived at the bridgehead?
Before.
That was before. So you did have some EDBA available, did you?
Yeah, earlier on I'd said to Mick Doug, or Watch Manager Doug, and I said, get some EDBA here, and he said, I'm doing it anyway. He said he was already thinking like I was, and I think he ordered a couple of FRUs, but for line ops, as far as I understand.
Yeah.
And he had a plan to use them for something.
Now, just going back to the question, we'll come back to Group Manager Welch later on, but just going back to my question about advice being given to the control room. You say you didn't know what it was.
No.
What assumption did you make? Or did you make an assumption about what the advice was being given by those calling in?
I would say the assumption, if you want to, and it is just an assumption, that the advice was to stay put.
Did you have any thoughts about whether that continued to be safe?
I did have thoughts. I thought nobody would make it down the stairs, so it was the only advice. The stairs were smoked out completely, and my BA crews were suffering, and they were wearing BA.
Yeah.
And I knew that it would be dangerous for anyone not in breathing apparatus to be in that stairwell.
Right.
And it was the only means of going up or coming down, escaping from the building. And it was an assumption, and that's why I asked Group Manager Welch. It was an assumption that people were being told to stay put.
Okay. Was there a way in which you could communicate with the control room about what you or your BA wearers were seeing and experiencing in the stairs?
All of that information was fed down to the incident commander through Watch Manager Watson and other officers.
So that's the link you had with the control room?
And not just him, but other officers and the firefighters who had been committed, and they were being battered. So.
Now, just to come back to Richard Welch, halfway down page 9, you say, I think it was about 2 to 2:30 hours, I had a conversation with Richard Welch as regards to the change, you say, in advice for the stay put policy. I can't recall the exact details of this conversation.
It was a question.
Okay. Can I just show you your evidence up there? You say, I can't recall the exact details of this conversation, but it wouldn't have changed our search and rescue tactics, but would have added an element of potential unpredictability to our operations.
Yeah.
We wouldn't have known where people were. Just taking this in stages, Richard Welch, when he arrived, what status did he have? Was he incident commander or what?
I was a bit confused about that because he told me he was fire sector commander, which was my job. At the time, it's bridgehead commander, you're fire sector commander, but he's quite a senior officer to me. So I was under the impression that he had taken over the entire incident.
Now, to put it in timing terms, we have him arriving at status 3, at 01:57:21. We also have your deployment of this 5-person or 5-firefighter Paddington EDBA crew at about the same time.
Yeah.
How soon after, that might help you remember, how soon after that deployment, do you remember Richard Welch coming to the bridgehead and you
Pretty
having...
soon afterwards.
Right.
Not immediately, but I mean, when he would have turned up, he would have had to make his assessment of what was going on. And there was a lot going on, so he would have gone to the command unit to
Right.
book in. He would have spoken to officers, collecting information, trying to formulate a plan. He's a senior officer, and that's what he would do.
And you say, I had a conversation with Richard Welch as regards the change in advice for the stay put policy.
I can't remember the exact time that was.
Well, so he comes to the bridgehead, and is this conversation about stay put at that stage when he first comes to the bridgehead to talk to you?
As I said, no, it wasn't. When he came first, it was, what are you doing?
Right.
Is it working? No. What do we need? Okay, I'll do that.
That was the EDBA
That was the
discussion.
conversation. Yeah, that was the conversation.
So did he then go away and come back?
Yeah, he did that throughout the night. He'd run downstairs, come back.
Okay.
Um,
And then you have this conversation as regards the change. How did that conversation go? How did the subject of changing the stay put policy come up?
I brought it up.
What did you say?
I asked him a question.
What was the question?
Is the stay policy? I can't remember the exact question, but has the stay policy been lifted, or is it going to be lifted? Something like that.
Why did you ask that question?
Because the fire was out of control.
Did you, just trying to get your thought processes, the fire being out of control, why did you think that it might be necessary to change the stay put policy?
It's a big question. Because the fire, the fire had outstripped, the event had outstripped our ability to rescue everybody on the information I had at the time.
Yes. And so changing from stay put, what did you think at the time the advice should be changed to?
I didn't have an opinion other than if people started to evacuate, they would become multiple casualties in the stairs, and that we would have great difficulty in finding out where people were.
Yeah.
Because when you have an FSG, you know where someone is, and if they're protected, you have a destination, X or Y flat, number of people. But if people start evacuating, when the entire building's on fire, or most of it's on fire, and the only way down is impossible, that would have been a huge catastrophe it would have really impeded our rescue operations.
Yes, and that's the sense we get from
And
what you're saying.
if my guys didn't know where people were, I couldn't say, well, go to this floor. You just have, as we did afterwards, people deceased in the stairwell, various parts of the building.
And at the stage you're having your conversation with Group Manager Welch, were you in favour of changing the stay put policy or against it?
No, I didn't. I wasn't in favour. I was wondering. It was a question. I needed to know what was going on. It's very important for me to know what kind of movement is happening in the building, what advice has been given.
I see. So do I understand your evidence to be that your conversation with him was exploratory? You just wanted to know?
Exploratory, yes.
I see. Did he tell you, when you had that conversation, what the status of the stay put
He said he
advice
didn't.
was?
At that time it was a question and an answer. It wasn't a conversation per se.
Okay.
I'm not being disrespectful here, but it was just that was it. It was a very short exchange between he and I, which we had many throughout the entire incident.
I'm sure.
And that was the exchange. And he said, "I don't know."
He said, "I don't know." Right. And do you know whether he went and discussed that question with anybody else?
You'd have to ask Group Manager Welch after that.
Right.
Sir.
At that stage, in terms of priorities, you've had this discussion with question and answer with Group Manager Welch. Were you prioritising firefighting or search and rescue, or were they the same?
Search and rescue.
Search and rescue. And jumping ahead a little bit, on page 11 of your statement, in the middle of the page, you refer to a time, I think quite early on in the incident,
Yeah.
Are you comfortable with
I
that?
am still have just sweaty palms.
Yeah, well,
That's okay. I think that's everybody in the room. So
I think you're right.
I just want to see if I can get a time on this, and then we'll go back. But in the middle of page 11, just after you've discussed a deployment and information you got from Murphy and Cornelius, this is floor 14, you say, by this time the situation had deteriorated even further. This was very early on in the incident, and the fire was developing so rapidly that BA crews were finding it difficult to get beyond the 12th floor.
correct.
Was that before or after you had this question and answer discussion with Group Manager Welch about changing the stay put advice?
Before.
Before, okay. Now, I want to just look, if I can, at a number of particular deployments and see if you can help me with them.
Okay.
The first one, and is that all right? I mean, I don't
It's
want
absolutely fine. Yes.
Okay. The first one is about a rescue, a trip to the 20th floor.
Yes.
Were you at the bridgehead when crew manager Secret and firefighters Badillo and Dorgu left the bridgehead to go to the 20th floor to perform a rescue?
I would have been, but I wasn't aware they went there.
You weren't aware? So,
No.
Okay. Were you aware that an FSG call was in progress with a 12-year-old girl on the 23rd floor?
Most likely, because we had multiple calls at that time. So if you ask me the number of a floor or flat, I wouldn't be able to tell you.
Right. So let me see if I can get a time on this. If you go to the operational response report and turn to page 59 and 60, 59 first of all, you can just have that on the screen. We see that at 01:35:24, operations manager Norman, she's in the control room at Stratford, rings the team leader, watch manager Merrick on CU8.
Yes.
And there's a conversation she has. And then over the page, we have a summary here of the information that is passed to CU8, and the source of that is the admin call and vision. And you'll see that the floor number, the fourth entry down, is number 23, and that there are 2 adults and 8 children. Remarks smoke going into the flat.
Yeah.
Now, that's at that time. Do you remember getting information at the bridgehead whilst you were in charge of it, after or just after that time, about a number of people on floor 23?
Can you just remind me of the time?
Well, that information comes in at 01:35:24.
Not specifically, but there was no was the answer. As with the BA crews that were going up, again, I wouldn't be able to keep tabs on them because I wasn't the entry control officer, although I was briefing people. But I didn't have, I clearly can't recall any specific numbers of flats. Well, maybe 1 or 2.
And, okay, do you remember having any discussion with firefighters Secret, Badillo and Dorgu as they went up the tower?
No. Yeah, sorry, go on, sir.
Did you learn from them while they were up the tower about the conditions they discovered once they got to the 20th floor?
No.
Or conditions in the stairwell?
Not me personally, but they may well have briefed the entry control officer on return, which I would suggest they did.
Right. Just to pin this down in time, we have the dispatch time, or the tally out time for Secret, Dorgu and Badillo at about 1:33. And just to be clear, for firefighter Secret, his telemetry data shows that the tally out time for him was 01:33:57, and the others 01:33:33 and 01:35:01. So that's the time they tally out. But I think you've told us that you didn't have a discussion with them about what they were doing when they went up.
That's correct. I didn't. I can't recall it, but there were a lot of BA crews. Well, everybody available at that time was going up, and I don't specifically remember speaking to any of that crew.
Do you remember whether Alex de St Albans spoke to that crew?
You'd have to ask firefighter St Albans, sir.
Do you remember whether there were BA crews going up into the building, up the stairs from the bridgehead, who weren't telling you or Alex de St Albans where they were going or what they were doing?
That did happen.
It did happen.
It did happen
Did
throughout
it happen
the incident.
Throughout the incident?
On a few points where I was maintaining control, command and control, and I remember one specific incident where a crew from Hammersmith, went past the entry control point with their tallies in their BA sets, which I observed, and I sent the crew manager after them, crew manager Tilsley from Paddington, to get them back and to book in correctly.
Right. And, okay. Was that long? Was that how far into the incident?
I couldn't tell you.
Okay. And just focusing on this trio of firefighters going to the 20th floor, we have them leaving the bridgehead at 01:33 or so, 33:57. Do you remember whether, after that time, when they'd gone, any further FSG information came to the bridgehead about floor 23?
It rings a bell.
It rings a bell.
Yeah, but I can't. Floor 23 does ring a bell.
Any particular flat number?
No. Look, I will say that numbers of flats, floors, times throughout the incident, except with one exception where I kept FSG notes in my tunic and retrieved them the following week. That's the only time stamp that I have from the entire incident, other than when I went in and came out of the tower.
Right. Can you help us with when the FSG call came in about a flat on the 23rd floor?
No, sir, I can't give you the time at all.
What about a call in relation to a flat on the 20th floor, 175? Do you remember?
I believe so, possibly. I don't know.
Do you know when that?
I remember my first BA crew, though. I think they went to the 16th floor. Sorry, it was a different.
Oh yeah, I'm going to come to that.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, I'm going to come to the 16th floor in a minute. But just on, there are two calls that are in progress.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, after 1:30. And after 1:30, and then I've shown you the CU8 information about the flat on the 23rd floor. The flat on the 20th floor, 175, you say that's FSG information which rings a bell. Do you know, do you remember having received FSG information about flat 175, what you did with that information?
I can answer by saying that all information on FSG information, received at the bridgehead was acted upon, was recorded and acted upon by committing BA crews.
Do you remember whether the information about flat 175 on the 20th floor was received by you at the bridgehead before the trio, Secret, Badeo and Dorgu, had left the bridgehead?
No, I don't remember.
Having received information about flat 175 on the 20th floor, did you then instruct a BA crew to go to that flat?
At that time?
Yes.
If I had a BA crew, yes, they would have been committed. But most likely at that time, we'd run out.
Right. Do you remember the trio of Secret, Badeo and Dorgu coming back down to the bridgehead?
No.
You don't?
No.
Do you remember any discussion with a trio, or, well, let me start again. Do you remember a discussion with crew manager Secret about a trip that he'd made to
No,
the 20th
definitely
floor?
not.
What about Badio?
No,
What about Dorgu?
no.
Are you clear in your recollection?
Quite clear, yes.
Would it
Not that
be-
I can recall. I mean, I got quite a good recall on events,
Right.
generally speaking. I don't recall that.
Because I think yesterday you were quite clear that you would your practice would be to have a face-to-face debrief with any BA wearer who'd gone up
If
into
possible, yeah. If there was important information, certainly.
the right.
Which is what I tried to do, to a point where I became overwhelmed by the amount of people giving me information. And fortunately for me, there was another watch manager, De Silva, who was detailed to come to the bridgehead to assist, and she took off a lot of that. She took over the FSG. Well, I detailed her to take over the FSG.
How soon was that after you'd started?
Well, you'd have to look at when Golf 341, book status 3, and then if I would say a time lapse of minutes while the watch manager De Silva was being briefed, on the fireground, and then she was escorted up to the bridgehead by, or accompanied, I should say, by watch manager Thompson from Watson, sorry, Paul Watson. When she came, I was very happy to see another watch manager, and so I detailed her to get a grip, is what the word I use, on the BA procedures and the FSG.
Right. Now, we have crew manager Secret coming down to the bridgehead and with an end of wear time of 01:57. We have Badio with an end of wear time of about the same, and also Dorgu. So just before 2 o'clock, a trio of BA wearers come down to the bridgehead. I know you say you didn't have a debrief with any of them. Do you remember any firefighter at around that time coming down to the bridgehead dangerously low on air?
Yeah, they all did, most of them.
Right.
That's the way it became initially, yeah.
Do you remember a firefighter coming down with metabolic heat stress?
No.
Okay. Do you remember firefighters coming down dangerously low on air and going out of the bridgehead without debriefing you?
No, I wouldn't allow that to happen.
You wouldn't allow that to happen?
Not if I was aware of what was happening, I wouldn't allow it.
Well, I was going to say, because we have this trio of firefighters, they go up to the 20th floor to perform a rescue. They don't succeed because they can't find anybody in the flat. They run out of air, we've heard evidence about this, and come down a smoky stairway. At least one of them very low on air, and then leave the bridgehead and not do a debrief with you. I mean, I'm just trying to get a feel
I
on
didn't
whether
see them.
that was something you remember.
I don't remember seeing them at all. They may have spoken to the people on the BA boards, which I would say definitely happened.
Right. Do you... Okay, thank you. Do you recall any firefighter coming down to you before 2 o'clock and saying the stairwell is completely smoke-logged?
Yes.
Who was that?
Firefighter Murphy and Firefighter Cornelius, Firefighter Crew Manager Stern and Firefighter Hippel. But particularly Firefighter Murphy from who was one of my guys at the time,
Yeah.
from Kensington, and Firefighter Cornelius.
Okay, now we're going to look at that deployment in some detail in a moment. But
Okay.
when they did come down to you and tell you that, did that indicate to you that residents in the building needed to be told by the control room about those conditions,
Certainly.
and that BA wearers going up to perform rescues and evacuations needed to make sure that they could get those residents down the stairwell in some way?
Without a doubt, but the issue of bringing, at this time, we don't have any facilities to bring people through smoke without injuring them.
So
That smoke of that intensity and that degree of smoke logging.
right.
because otherwise my guys wouldn't be wearing breathing apparatus. You know, this is a highly irrespirable atmosphere, toxic, and you won't get very far.
No. And if the conditions on the 20th floor that Secret Dorgu and Badia had discovered, thick smoke in the flat 176, thick smoke in the lobby, thick smoke in the stairway, right down to just before the bridgehead, as crew manager Secret told us yesterday. In the light of those conditions that were there, as he said, before 2 o'clock, what advice should the control room be giving to callers who are trapped in their flats?
A description of the conditions.
Right. And was it important for control room themselves to know precisely what was happening inside the building?
Of course, yeah, very important. I would suggest that crew went to the incident commander, who was their officer anyway. If they didn't brief me, they would have spoken to the engine control board. They would certainly, I would say, certainly spoken to their watch manager.
Right. Now, we're going to take a break in just a few minutes.
Okay.
Can I just ask you just one about a particular deployment? Do you remember the first deployment of EDBA?
Yes.
And that was a deployment of a 5-person or 5-firefighter Paddington team. Do you remember that?
That's correct. Yes, Paddington's line crew. Yeah.
And we have them leaving, well, we have them tallying out of the bridgehead at 1:56 and 1:57 or so. Would that be about right in terms of?
Yeah, it would be, I'd say.
In terms of your recollection.
I'm just, yeah.
Do you remember where they were tasked to go?
They were tasked to go to the roof.
Right. Whose idea was that?
Incident commander.
Who was that at that stage?
Watch manager Dowden, I believe.
Right. And what were they going to do on the roof?
Set up a line drencher system, or set up a series of lines with their special skills. They said for a drencher.
Right. Did you say special skills? Did that particular crew have particular drencher
That was their
skills?
brief, was to go and set up a system of lines to secure people or to secure equipment on the roof.
You say lines? You mean ropes?
Ropes, yeah. Sorry, we call them lines in the fire brigade. Ropes, yeah. They're rope specialists.
Right. Okay. And how would that work? Well, how was it supposed to work? Did you?
I don't know.
Right.
I didn't give the. It wasn't my plan. I didn't give the instruction.
Do you think it was a feasible strategy?
No.
Where's that?
Why? The building, as far as I was concerned, at that time there were multiple seats of fire, and from the 16th floor all the way up, and that they wouldn't have made it.
Right.
I told them that. I said to them, from my perspective inside the tower, I don't think it's a good idea. I didn't believe it was a good idea. But I can understand the logic of it.
Right. And
But the actuality was, I said to them, to the crew manager Wigley, I said, Phil, I said, I don't think it's a good idea. I don't think you're going to make it.
Right. Did you tell him did you think there might have been a better use for the
Yes.
EDBA
Rescue.
than using it to go to the roof?
No, just rescue.
For rescue. Did you tell Phil Wigley that?
Something along those lines, and he said to me, well, I've been instructed by the incident commander. I said, well, fair enough. I knew they had a long travel distance, so I told him not to start up immediately, which goes outside policy of BA. So I'm just going to take some water in this one. And he had some young firefighters with him, so they were less experienced. I knew it was a very hazardous journey, so I said to him, look, start up when you see thick smoke, not now. So give me your tallies, get as many floors as you can up into the building, if you are going to get to the roof, and then start up and look after each other.
Right. And did they start up to go to the
They
roof?
didn't start up there, and then they gave me their tallies, and then they walked as far as they could up into the tower.
Right.
Their equipment.
How far did they get, do you know?
You'd have to ask them that. I don't know. I can't recall. But I know they carried out a rescue instead. They never made it to the roof. They weren't going to anyway. It was never going to happen.
Right. Were you able to stay in radio contact with them?
No.
Did you try?
I tried. It would be good to ask the engine control officers these questions. I think Watch Manager De Silva might have been there at that time, although I don't know.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, it may be appropriate now to have another,
Yeah, I think we should have another
10-minute
break.
Thanks very much.
Right, Mr. O'Keefe, we'll come back at 12:20. All right?
Okay, thank you very
Again,
much.
no discussion of your evidence.
Of course not. Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. Good, 12:20 then, please. I think Mr. O'Keefe's just on his way. Right. All right, Mr. O'Keefe.
Yes, sir.
Mr. O'Keefe, thank you
Yes,
for
sir.
coming back to us. You've given us a very clear picture of the development of smoke in the stairwell.
Yes.
And so have other witnesses. Did you know? Well, let me show you first of all. Can you please be shown page 87 of the operational response report? And if we just focus on 0158, the time there, it says that between 0139 and 0158, which is the time when you were managing the bridgehead, the following residents have either been rescued, assisted out, or self-evacuated from Grenfell Tower. And then there's a list of 20 individuals. And the source of that is various different notes. But I just want to ask you, given that 20 individuals come out between 139 and 158, how did they manage to get through the lobbies and down the stairs if they were so completely smoke-logged? What was the method by which they would be able
Well, they were either carried or assisted.
Right. And what about their breathing?
They would have had smoke inhalation.
Right. Was there any way of being able to assist residents who were being evacuated with their
No.
breathing through smoke?
The firefighters started doing that, taking off their own masks and putting them on people
Right.
whilst they were in the smoke.
Okay. Given what you've told us earlier about the conditions of the building by about 2 o'clock in terms of smoke logging, how safe would it have been for individuals to evacuate from their flats and come down the stairwell?
It would have been unsafe, dangerous.
Right. And what would that mean to your way of thinking at the time about the stay put policy and whether it should change?
So can you
Yeah.
ask me that question again?
Yes, of course. Did that fact, the fact that it would be unsafe, have any impact on how you viewed the safety or otherwise of the stay put policy?
I wasn't thinking about the stay put policy for most of the time I was in there. I was thinking about rescuing people.
Right. And how would one rescue a resident in the middle of the tower at that time?
With great difficulty.
Of
The
course.
how,
But how is
physically
a matter
take the
of
person,
method?
to physically take the person out and hope they can get downstairs with them.
Right.
I know from firefighters who were rescuing people that people were collapsing while they were being rescued and they had to be carried the rest of the way. So they were taken out into the smoke because there was no other option, and then they would lose consciousness, and then they would be carried down by the firefighters, rescued.
Okay. Now I'm going to ask you in a moment or two about some specific rescues. Before I do, I've just got a few more general questions about information flows at the bridgehead. First of all, did you brief firefighters before they were committed?
Not all the firefighters, no. I did until Watch Manager Lou De Silva turned up. Yes.
And what kind of information were you able to give those firefighters you did brief?
The number of the floor, number of the flat, number of people requiring rescue, and the conditions believed, if known, the conditions in that area on that floor.
And where, just to be clear, where were you getting that information from?
From other firefighters. That was it. Some FSG information where a resident would open a door and see smoke, and then that would be because with fire survival guidance, our operators stay on the line with the person indefinitely, and That person will relay the information back to our controller, who will relay that back to the command post, who will relay that back up to the fire sector or search and rescue sector.
Right. And in each case, whenever you briefed a crew to go up into the tower, were you, or did you make it clear for what purpose you were sending them? Firefighting?
Absolutely, yes.
And in all, what was it in all cases?
Well, initially, as I
case.
stated, I was committing crews with firefighting equipment until we ran out of it. Additional to that, it's not a simple answer, but additional to that, firefighters were becoming compromised, meaning they were running out of air, they're carrying a lot of equipment, which can be up to 50 kilograms, including a BA set and fire kit, and so an individual will be carrying that upwards, vertically travelling up through the conditions they were in and everything else. So the brief would be pretty much used up all our firefighting equipment rapidly. Would be to do search and rescue,
Right.
extraction, or whatever you want to call it, but to find the location, locate the person, and bring them out.
And when firefighters returned to the bridgehead, and we've had a little bit of this specifically with the secret Badillo Dorgu trio, when they came back to the bridgehead, in general terms, did they debrief with you?
No,
They
they
didn't.
didn't. I cannot recollect speaking to the North Kensington's crew.
No, but what about other crews? Did you generally debrief with other?
If I had the opportunity, but quite often if they're bringing out a casualty, you won't stop to speak to someone on the bridgehead. Every casualty that was brought down was brought straight out of the building as rapidly as possible for medical treatment.
Where they came back to the bridgehead without having carried out a rescue, or where their deployment had not been successful
Yes.
for the purpose for which they'd been sent, did you debrief with them?
They would come and seek me out ordinarily and tell me that, which happened quite a lot, that they couldn't make it to the fire flats.
Did they give you information about what the conditions like that they did encounter?
Yes.
And what did you record that information?
It would have been recorded on the BA board
Okay, and
or on the favour of the wall.
the BA board being the forward information board.
Yes.
Okay, and then on the wall. And was that then information then communicated back to the incident commander?
As I said, my point of contact was Watch Manager Watson for quite a lot of the. So I was feeding him information, and he would take it back.
Right. Okay. And were you confident that that information about the conditions in the tower was going
confident?
further back up the chain?
I wouldn't say confident. I would hope that it was being transmitted.
Okay. And did the information that you were getting from firefighters who'd gone into the tower and had come down, as it were, empty-handed, without having carried out their mission, did that information make you consider firefighting tactics and any change you needed to make in it?
Yes.
What?
I told guys to stop starting up at the bridgehead and to travel as far as they could to extend the duration of their sets.
Right, and how far did you discover how far up into the tower they could get without breathing apparatus?
One particular crew went 7 floors, but that was later on when the fire had vented. But initially, I don't know.
Right. And were you monitoring what floors firefighters were able to reach and not able to reach as you went?
He had a general sense of of the limitations of what they were doing, or how far they could travel.
Right. And after the first sort of half an hour or so of your being on the bridgehead, were you able to continue to maintain contact with the relevant incident commander?
No.
Right. So at what point do you think you lost reliable radio contact with the incident commander?
Just after pumps 10.
Oh, you said before, just after pumps 10. And do you know why you lost reliable radio contact at that stage?
Well, I would say that the radio traffic was considerable.
Right.
And that watch manager Dowden, who at one stage was managing a 25 pump incident, was entirely occupied with that incident. And it would have been very difficult for him to take time to use his radio when he had this unfolding in front of him.
Okay. So,
And also, just to finish,
no, please.
when there's a lot of radio traffic, it's very difficult to transmit any information or to get it's like, it just overwhelms it.
Now, you've given us a lot of information about the use of the forward information board, the sources of that information, and the wall. Do you know, or did you know at the time, about a firefighter, a crew manager, doing an exercise of collating and cross-checking fire survival guidance information that he was getting on a car bonnet on the fire ground?
I heard about it, yes. I did make an inquiry, and yes, it was, yes. I don't know what exactly it was.
No. You said you made an inquiry.
I was informed about it
When was that?
early on in the incident.
Right. You say you made an inquiry. Did you ask about what made you make the inquiry?
Just what was going on outside. You know, we were speaking to each other constantly, and I think I was in the tower for about 8 hours. So in that 8 hours window, there's such an amount of information that I cannot recollect individual conversations. Some I can, some I can't. The really important ones that I think were important, I can because they're stamped on my mind. The others, no.
Okay. And did there come a time when you understood that the chain of communication from the command unit to the bridgehead had changed?
Yeah, in a degree. When I started getting pieces of paper coming up, I knew that the radio transmissions were becoming difficult.
Right.
And it was more expedient to have someone to deliver the information in person.
Did you ever talk to Daniel Egan?
Never, no, not during the incident. I know Daniel Egan reasonably well, station manager, but no,
Yeah.
I didn't see him.
Okay. At the foot of page 9 of your statement, you refer to people, residents, coming up to you and giving you information, and you had to stop them physically.
Yeah, that was very early on. That was at the very beginning.
I was going to ask you. That was very early on.
The statement seemed to jump. The police statement jumps around a bit, but that was at the very beginning of the incident.
Yeah, that's helpful. Thank you. And the information that you got from residents, you say at the very bottom, I took flat numbers from 2 of them, but the other people just threw their keys at me. They had no numbers on them, so I didn't know which flats the kids were in.
That's
in
right.
the end, crews physically took them out of the building. Just in terms of that information, did you record that information anywhere?
Not me personally, no.
Did anybody else?
I don't. I think I directed them the information towards one of the firefighters that was there with the BA board, but I can't recall exactly, so I cannot give you an approximate answer to that.
Right.
My concern at that very moment, and it was in the moment, was preventing people from going back into the fire. And they'd come up the stairs in a state of anxiety, and I had enough on my plate dealing with what was unfolding. So I turned around to them and said, "No, you can't come in." And we had this discussion where one lady was she was quite upset. She wanted to go back in. I was trying to persuade her in the gentlest way I could that it wasn't possible.
Right.
So I asked. It became to overwhelm me a bit. Not emotionally at that time. It did later, but.
Are you all right dealing with this now?
I'll take a break. 1 second.
Right.
Just a sip of water.
Just
I'm okay. Just
have a pause.
Have a pause. Yeah.
So
So I asked some firefighters to escort the residents back down the stairs, and that's what happened. It happened very quickly. Well over, how long does it take to persuade someone that they can't go back into a building?
Yes. Just a couple of questions about something you gave some evidence about earlier on, about a discussion with Richard Welch about EDBA.
Yeah.
At the bottom of page 11, you say you have a discussion with the incident commander. This is 6 lines up from the end of page 11, about EDBA. Is that the discussion you're referring to that you had with Group Manager Welch, or is that a different discussion?
No, that's a different discussion. That was the earlier on in the incident.
Right.
That's not the discussion I had with Group Manager Welsh.
Okay. And then just pursuing this a bit more.
Okay.
At the bottom of page 12, and this is just in time where you say that Andy Walton had appeared. You say, I continued with my team as before. At some point, Group Manager Richard Welch arrived at the bridgehead and stated he was taking over. I briefed him and discussed the current situation with him. I told him that SDBA crews were unable to reach persons on the upper floors and said that this was a job where EDBA was required. That discussion, was that the first conversation you had with Richard Welch?
Correct. It was the very first conversation I had with him that night.
So that was the question and answer?
One of many, but that's the first.
Right, I see. And you then go on to say, Richard Welch asked me how much EDBA was required, and I said, all of it. And he said, that wasn't possible. I said, we needed all of the EDBA in London. We had to have it. He said, really? And I replied saying, everything. He said, okay, I'll get EDBA. He's a good officer, Richard Welch. I've never worked with him before, but he seemed like a very practical man, and I communicated quite well with him. He let me carry on doing what I was doing. Is that the discussion you gave evidence about a little earlier on this morning, about the first, as it were, the question and answer?
That is correct.
Okay. And is it at that point, do you think, that he then went off and summoned all the EDBA he could get his hands on?
He wouldn't have done that personally. We would have got someone to do it for him.
Right. I just want to be able to get a time fix on that if we can. If you can please be shown tab 23, the short incident log. We think we have a time for this, but I just want to see if you can help me with it. If you turn, please, to page 24. Well, no, in fact, I'm so sorry. 23. At 024203, there is an informative message which says halfway down, major incident declared, high-rise procedure implemented, etc. And then TL, ALP, EDBA, main control, FSG. Now, that I think is the first reference we've seen here to EDBA. Would that be about the time when you had your discussion with Richard Welch?
No, I don't think so. That's an informative message, as you can see. And when you send a description of an incident, you have got to include the equipment being used currently at that time.
Well, we've seen an early deployment of EDBA with the Paddington 5-man crew just before 2 o'clock.
Yeah.
So there was clearly EDBA equipment on the fireground at that stage. Can I just ask you, would it be necessary specifically to order EDBA, or would some pumps from some stations have EDBA?
You have to order it.
You have to order it, right?
Specifically.
So do you know how the Paddington 5-man crew came to have EDBA with them by 1:57? Was there a specific?
Because he had the incident commander had requested 2 FRUs. If you look for previously for an assistant message sent earlier, you would have seen a request for 2. I think it was 2 fire rescue units.
That's so.
And that's why the fact that they were being used would be included in the informative. I don't know what time I spoke to Richard Welch and had that conversation with him, and I don't know what time I would have guessed priority message was sent for additional EDBA.
Right. Well, we have a message at 012946, make pumps 20 FRU times 2.
There you go.
Is that it? Right. Okay. Well, that helps.
So what Watch Manager Dorgu is asking for is for a 20 pump attendance and 2 FRUs.
Right.
So we use the terminology make pumps 20, and FRUs too. That's how we speak
Yes.
on the radio. It's radio discipline.
Right. And how many EDBA sets would there be on one FRU?
I think it's 4.
Right. So 2 FRUs, 8,
Yes.
which would account for how 5. There were 5 EDBA wearers.
There might have been 5 on the FRU that night. I couldn't go into the detail of it.
No, I understand. All right. So that's helpful. Now, so when an informative message comes, EDBA, what does that tell us? What does it tell us about how many EDBAs are on order? Or does it just tell you that
The informative message merely states that it's in use,
Okay.
not how many.
Okay. I think the first message I've got with anything like all EDBA sets is, and I may be wrong about this, but there's a turning out message which starts at 0355, turning out with message for EDBA. Would that reflect a general call for all EDBA?
Turning out is mobilisation is the time they're being turned out.
Yes, right. What would that tell us about how many EDBA?
What you need to find, sir, is the assistance message. Well, when it was requested from the fireground to increase EDBA attendance.
Yes. Well, let me just show you. I'm sorry to labour this a bit. Let me just show you page 24 of the short incident log, very top of the page, at 3:05:51. That says RPE unit with EDBA approx 1 hour. These are being ordered as the BA support units.
That's a bulk carrier. That's not FRUs. So I forget the actual terminology. But we have units in the fire brigade with BA support units, which will bring fresh BA sets to the fireground in a pod.
Right, okay. And what does that tell you about, if anything, about whether the discussion you'd had with Mr. Welch, Group Manager Welch, about getting all EDBA sets had been actioned?
That would be, I'd say that would be after they were requested.
Right.
So you'd have to go before that to find the moment where a priority message was sent to request make of FRUs so many, and the CBRN team, which was the chemical, biological, radiation, nuclear team, their EDBA. That's what they use EDBA in that department. Yeah. They would have been ordered on at the same time.
Right. I think. Right. Well, we'll look at that over lunch. Can I then start then by asking you about a specific briefing, and this is Hipple and Stern to the 16th floor.
Yes.
Now, at page 10 in paragraph 3 on that page, you describe, it's about a third of the way down the page, that you committed one crew, Jamal Stern and firefighter Hipple, to the 16th floor because I had information that there was somebody who needed rescuing up there. First of all, what was that information? Do you remember?
A resident had told, I believe, had informed the crew that there was or somebody had informed the crew that there was a resident, had approached them, and that somebody was believed trapped in that area.
Right.
Smoke.
And we looked at the telemetry data for Hipple and Stern earlier, and we have them tallying out of entry control at 0117 or so. So is it right that the information that there was somebody on the 16th floor who needed rescuing was before that?
Yes.
And when they tallied out, did you give Stern and Hipple a briefing?
No, they were on the rear already. They were originally committed as the hose management crew.
Right. And in fact, you said earlier on this morning and that they were the hose management crew, and in your statement on page 8 at the top, you say you'd already sent them to the 5th floor, and then they went to the 6th floor. So the information about rescue on the 16th floor came to you, did it while they were under air in the building?
Correct.
Right. And were you then able to communicate with them?
Yes, I don't recall the exact communication, but they were redeployed because I didn't believe there was any fire on the 16th. I wasn't aware of any fire on the 16th floor at that time because it was so instantaneous.
Yes.
For what was going on.
So I see. So they didn't come back down to the bridgehead. They were
No.
in the building, and you communicate. Which of the firefighters did you communicate over the radio with? Do you remember?
Crewmanager Stern, I believe.
Stern. And
I can't remember for certain.
which channel were you on?
That would have been 6. I was switching between 1 and 6.
Did you have any difficulties getting hold of him?
Afterwards, yeah.
No,
not then, but not afterwards. When they went up into the tower, I personally couldn't communicate with anybody.
Where were they, do you think, in the building when you first told them that you had an FSG for a rescue on the 16th floor?
I couldn't tell you.
Right. Was it before or after they told you that it's fucked, it's going?
Afterwards.
And they were on the 6th floor at that stage?
Yeah, that was well before that. They were utilised to reconnoitre that area. That was much earlier on. I was before, I should say. They were detailed to go and check for fire spread. That had been reported to me.
Right. Let me just see if I can get the chronology then. On page 8 at the top, they tell you by radio that it's completely smoked out on this floor. And I think you said that was the 6th floor.
That was the 6th floor, yes.
So when you briefed them to go to the 16th floor, having had the FSG information, was that after Stern had come back to you and told you it was smoked out on the 6th floor?
Yes.
Right. How long after, do you think?
I couldn't tell you. Long,
short, minutes?
Short.
Right. So we can pinpoint that a bit better. And you tell him to go to the 16th floor. Does he respond, Jamal Stern?
I don't recall.
And you say in your statement that you had information that there was someone who needed rescuing there. I'm sorry, I'm back on page 10, a third of the way down. You say, I had information. What form did you have that information in?
I don't recall because I was getting so much information at that time.
Do you remember whether it was a piece of paper or a message?
A piece of paper. It would have been either verbally or a message to me on radio.
Okay, all right. Verbally. Do you remember whether it was verbally from somebody coming up from the lobby or a firefighter coming down?
I don't recall.
Right. Okay. Now, what about communications with Justin O'Byrne? Is it possible that the information you gave was to Justin O'Byrne, who passed it on to Hippel and Stern? Or?
Possibly.
Right. When you deployed firefighters Hippel and Stern, did you give them the flat number?
I don't recall. I think it was the location. I don't recall, actually.
So when you say you had information on the 16th floor, was that all? Is that the totality?
No, I genuinely can't remember the details of numbers very much. Other than I knew they went to the 16th floor.
Right. And do you know roughly where in the building the flat that they were going to was?
No.
Which side of the building?
No.
No, you didn't. Okay. Were you aware at that stage that the fire had spread from the east facade?
No.
Okay. All right. Did you learn? Sorry, did you had communications with Hippel and Stern as they went up? I think you said
before they went. Yes.
Before they went,
and when they came back down.
Right. Okay. I may have misunderstood you. It's my fault. When they were in the tower.
They were in the tower.
I thought you'd tell us earlier that you told them to go to the 16th floor once they were up in the tower.
Yeah, they were in the tower. They were still on the rear.
Yeah.
They hadn't closed down.
No.
I redeployed them because I had information there was fire, and it was smoke, sorry, on the 16th floor.
Right. Let me just go back then. I may have confused you. I'm sorry if I have. When you gave them the instructions to go to the 16th floor, where were Hipple and Stern?
I don't know. They were in the tower.
They were in the tower, but they weren't at the bridgehead.
No, they weren't at the
Right.
bridgehead. No.
So you communicated with them by radio, as you've
Yes.
said. Right, that's what I thought. When you did that, did you know that they were with a resident?
No.
Did you know that they were with the son of the man that Hipple and Stern were going to rescue on the 16th
Well, that would
floor?
make sense.
But did you know that?
No,
You
no, I
didn't?
didn't.
Okay. Do you remember Stern and Hipple coming back down to the bridgehead after going to the 16th floor?
Yes.
Do you remember a debriefing?
I remember what Dick Hipple said, or Richard, firefighter Hipple said to me.
What was that?
It was on fire. He was shocked.
What was on fire?
The 16th floor.
The whole
It was smoke. It was completely smoked out, and he said he didn't see flame, but he could feel intense heat.
Do you know how far into the 16th floor Richard Hipple went?
No, I can't recall actually, but
Do you think he told you?
probably did. Knowing Richard, he's quite exact.
Okay. So were you satisfied that you'd got as full a debrief from Richard Hipple
Not a full no.
that you could have done?
It wasn't a calm environment at that time.
No,
It was. There were multiple rescue operations just commencing or in the process, and I was trying to manage that at the bridgehead. So when firefighters would come to me and give me information, it wouldn't be all a very complex, long description. It would be the required information is there is fire on the 16th floor, which would culminate in that.
Right. And did Jamal Stern tell you about what he had experienced?
I don't recall.
What impression did you get from the debrief that Richard Hipple gave you about the success of the rescue?
He was unsuccessful, I believe, and he was shocked that the 16th floor was on fire.
Did you record anywhere the information about the deployment?
I don't recall. I don't remember.
Right. Is it something you would have recorded on the forward information board, or,
It would have been, yes.
or on the wall?
It would have been recorded, but not by me, because they would have to go to the entry control officer. I had Justin O'Byrne there as well, and other people assisting, and they would have got that information and put it on the wall at this stage.
Right. And do you know what happened to that information, that the deployment had been unsuccessful after it had been debriefed to you by Richard Hipple?
Not precisely, but it would have been. It would have been. Well, I would have known about it, and the incident commander would have been informed also. But I was unable to communicate with the incident commander at that time. Well, I did briefly tell him the floor. There was that the 16th floor was on fire, and that's when I urged him to make pumps 10.
Right. So did you indicate to the incident commander that there was a failed rescue on that floor?
One of many, yes. I can't remember that one specifically, but I was indicating to Watch Manager Watson, who was transporting that information upwards.
So your communication to the incident commander was via Watch Manager Watson
And other officers.
Okay, which other officers?
I don't recall.
Okay, right. But so far as you're concerned, you passed on back up the communication chain the fact that the rescue mission to the 16th floor had not succeeded.
Yeah, because I deployed another BA team there more or less immediately.
Well, I was about to ask you that. That was my next question. Having discovered that this deployment with Hipple and Stern had not been successful to the 16th floor, did you deploy another team?
I did immediately, yes. When they became available, I think it was Ealing, as far as I know.
Ealing, you think?
I believe so.
And just before we break, I wonder if we can just identify that in the...
If you could say the name of the officer in charge, I could probably identify it next
telemetry data. You think it was Ealing?
Possibly.
Okay, well, we have Hipple and Stern coupling from Bodyguard at... well, it's a bit difficult because the times are all over the place. But at the end of their wear time, we have as 0138.
Yeah.
Would that be about right? In terms
Yes.
of your recollection, they come down.
Would be about right.
Right. And there's a rebriefing at around that time of a Kensington and 2 from Hammersmith, Broderick and Sefton. But they're not.
Okay, they possibly, they weren't the crew that went there.
Right.
They would possibly have gone to another FSG within the building,
Right.
or firefighting.
We don't, I think, have an Ealing deployment. We have an Acton deployment at 052.
So
01, 52,
Ealing,
51.
who were the crews in Ealing?
Well, perhaps I'll look at this over the lunch break and come back to you.
Okay.
I can't at the moment see an Ealing crew until.
Well, I don't know if it was Ealing, but I remember
later on.
I remember the crew, committing another crew to that flat.
Okay. Well, perhaps we can chase that up ourselves
Okay.
internally and come back to you.
All right.
About that after the break.
Is
Is
it
now
a
a
good
convenient time for a break? Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
We'll have a break now. Again, please don't talk to anyone about your evidence,
Of course, sir.
and we'll resume at 2 o'clock. please.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Good. Thank you all very much. 2 o'clock, please.